Good evening and welcome to the Council meeting. I'm Councillor Soph McVeigh, the Deputy Mayor. The Mayor has another engagement and will be joining us later. Monday of last week was the 4th anniversary of the fire at Grenfell Tower, where 72 of our residents tragically lost their lives. I ask every member of the Council to pay our deepest and continuing respects in the conventional manner by marking the moment with 72 seconds silence. Would everyone please stand? Anne-Marie Petty. Members will be very sad to learn of the passing on the 7th of June of Anne-Marie Petty, the Council's head of strategic procurement, and we send our condolences to her family. I shall now ask the Chief Executive to report apologies for absences or lateness from the meeting.
I've received apologies for absence from Councillor Atkinson, Councillor Beryl Cox, Councillor Siren, Councillor El Nagy, Councillor Jackson, Councillor Marshall, Councillor Mills, Councillor Wason, Councillor Mason, Councillor Healy and Councillor Freeman. I've received apologies for lateness from Mayor, Councillor Hargreaves and Councillor Charles O'Connor.
Thank you. Do any members have a disclosable pecuniary interest in any matter before the Council this evening? No. And could I please request that members, when speaking, remain seated this evening, so you'll stay within your screened areas. And it'll also mean that your nameplate in front of you will be in shot for the camera. And if you wish to speak, please, can you raise your hand? And I don't think the buttons work for that. Thank you. The minutes of the annual general meeting of the Council held on the 26th of May have been circulated. I shall take these as read unless anyone has a point to raise. Yep. Item 4, public contributions. These contributions were invited via the Council's website. We have 2 speakers this evening. 5 minutes will be allocated to each person to address the Council and for councillors to respond. Susan Ritchie from Mutual Gain is here this evening to facilitate this part of the meeting. I'll now hand over to Susan.
This evening about public safety. Good evening. My name is Claire Van Helfteren and I am Chair of the Independent Advisory Group for Kensington and Chelsea Police. As you may all be aware, the Royalty Studio Police Counter is due to close imminently. This was always temporary and was set up in the wake of the Grenfell tragedy. Notting Hill Station is also due to be sold by Mopac. The previous Mayor of London decided each borough would only have one 24/7 front counter. The current Mayor is overseeing a large increase in police numbers. However, the sale of Notting Hill Station and the closure of Royalty Studios means there will not be a visible police presence in North Kensington. The only 24/7 front counter is to be in the Earls Court Road. As the Chair of Kensington and Chelsea IAG, I'd like to reiterate the importance of the police presence in North Kensington. Just last week, I had the opportunity to go out with the TSG, the Territorial Support Group, on a night shift. Within 2 hours, we had stopped a number of vehicles, and then a vehicle containing 2 individuals who were clearly involved in the sale of drugs in North Kensington. One of the individuals was taken to Royalty Studios in order to carry out a strip search. If this had not been possible, the carrier would have had to travel to Hammersmith or Charing Cross, thus taking a valuable police asset off the streets, an asset that is clearly needed on our streets. The gang tensions in north of the borough are extremely high currently. With the famous Portobello Market and the annual Notting Hill Carnival, plus the legacy of the Grenfell tragedy, this area has unique needs, and a police presence is critical to the community. I call upon the Council not to look at this as a party political issue, but a community issue, and to work together to ensure MOPAC maintains a police presence in North Kensington. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Can I invite Councillor Emma Will to respond?
Start by thanking Claire for coming tonight and speaking to on a subject which I know everybody in this chamber considers very important, and also to thank her for the work she does on the IAG. I know she works very hard on that. I don't want to say too much because we do have a motion later, but I think she has underlined why we cannot go on with the state of affairs of not knowing what is happening with our 2 police stations. We've been in a state of suspended animation for several years. We're not hearing anything from the police. They promised a consultation immediately after election. We haven't heard that. Our local police are struggling as well because they have no certainty, and that makes them very hard. And I really want to echo what she said about this not being party political. This is about all of us doing our best for our community. And as I say, we'll talk about it in more detail later. But thank you so much for talking about this tonight.
Thanks for coming, Claire, and thanks for raising an important issue. We, Labour group of councillors, we've been calling for this for many years, and because we represent northern wards, we know the crime and drug-related crimes and mainly antisocial behaviour. We do know the importance of having a presence, footprint. I was visiting the police station 2 weeks ago, and we offered our support to them. We can't agree any more than this with you and with the other side of the chamber. We will be talking about this later on. This is not about party politics. It's about our communities. We need to make our residents and communities as safe as possible. Thanks for coming.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Nabil Shouker. I'm a bereaved of 6 family members. And I'm part of the dedicated service. 2 years ago, I wasn't given the chance to speak. I wanted to speak because I wanted to play a partial role in what's going on and what's happening. Now I've had to put it in writing in order to voice what's going on and what's happening. Dear councillors, a famous writer by the name of William Shakespeare once said, "Friends, countrymen, lend me your ears." I'm here to say, please, I ask dear councillors to listen to what I have to say. On the behalf of families, and on behalf of everybody who is in the dedicated service, they are asking for an increase of the dedicated budget individual budget to be increased. Now, some people may look at that as money into the bank. It is money not into the bank. Some people may say it is compensation. It is not compensation. This is all about increasing an individual services budget to allow the person or the member to look for a service that suits him or what suits him and his family. Many, I heard last month's meeting, money is being poured and wasted on service that we don't want. We don't want service. We want to choose our own service. We know what's best for our families. Now, I'm asking you members, councillor members, to please look at it and to give the families the chance to choose their own service. This way, it removes all responsibility from that you cannot be blamed or looked at, because the family will be able to choose their own individual service, what suits them and what's best for them. Many families, from the day it was started, a dedicated service, we have been fighting, literally fighting, to increase the individual service budget so we can try and improve the service, so we can have a better service for ourselves, what we need to do. Now, they've only managed within 2 years to increase it by £1,000. That is unacceptable. That is no good. It can be done better. It should be done with immediate effect. Money has gone into services where it should have never have gone. We don't have a right to dictate to anyone's family that this service is good for you. That family member should be able to choose what service is best for him and his family, because he knows what's best for himself and his family. I ask of you, dear councillors, please to look at what has gone wrong. It has failed. It has failed us 2 years. It has failed us. This money should have been increased long time so people can look at more supporting themselves and their families. I ask urgently that you all please look at this with immediate effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Nabil. Can I ask Councillor Campbell to respond?
First of all, Nabil, thank you very much for coming here tonight. I think it's fair to say that we know that some bereaved and survivors are finding the dedicated service to work well for them, but some others, like you, feel that it should be changed. And last month at the leadership team, we made the decision that we should have a review of the dedicated service. And in fact, next week, I believe, we'll be writing out to all bereaved and survivors, everyone who uses it, because we're genuinely interested to find out what their views are, you know, and how it can be improved in future. And I believe the consultation is going to be really extensive with surveys, workshops, focus groups, independent facilitation. So I'd really urge you to be part of that, because as you said, the dedicated service has to work for the people who use it. And the review will happen in 2 phases. The first will focus on feedback from what we hear and ideas of how we might improve the service. And the second will be about sharing that feedback and exploring other potential models which might be better. And there are some people who obviously want to move very quickly, but there are others who don't, who actually find the service to work well for them. So we do have to proceed with great sensitivity. But I do accept your point that we absolutely do need this review, and it will be going ahead, and you should be being contacted next week for your views.
Thanks for coming, Nabil, and thanks for raising this important issue again. You are talking about common sense. It's perfectly making sense to me and to us on this side, and most of the councillors, I think. Sometimes bureaucracy kills the project itself, and you are straight to the point. You especially, the whole Greenfield tragedy was dealt with in a wrong way from the first place. Greenfield, this borough should have been declared as a disaster zone from the first place. This question should have never been raised because the national government should have been in charge, because what happened was beyond any local government to deal with it. But the government, national government failed us in this borough. So you have our support, and we will be working on the other side, and we support your vision to have a quick view on this, and each family should have specific services designed for them that suits them best. Thanks.
To add, the councillors, that 2 years has gone by and the money has been used on what it shouldn't have been used. I ask that you please look back at trying to sort something out in where it's gone or how it's gone. It should have gone more towards the family. 5 million per year should have gone towards services, not 2 million towards staffing and the building. You know, this is very unacceptable. It should have, you know, you want to help families, you really need to help and look at supporting them where they should help, where it's needed. The food bank, I just want to mention, sorry. Just one last thing regarding the food bank. Last week, I'll be very quick on this. Last week, councillors, on the anniversary, I was walking by a food bank, and I came across a woman who had just given birth to a prematured baby. That mother was in dying need of basic essentials. She did not have a bed for her child. She did not have blankets, nappies, milk, everything. She didn't even know that where she was standing, it was a food bank. Money has been given to this charity, to that therapy, and the basic needs have been forgotten. The basic elements where people are dying have been forgotten. Councillors, you were elected by the people to support and help the people. Please, I ask to re-look at your hearts and go back and to see where you went wrong. These people are in dying need of support and an increase in help, especially the food bank. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're now moving on to petitions. Do members have any petitions to present? Councillor Charles Williams.
Madam Deputy Mayor, Place, which the prayer is that the residents of Carre Place would like to have back their tranquil and family-conducive environment by closing the end of the Carre Place, using pavements, trees and bollards to end the constant flow of unnecessary traffic that is bringing nuisance, pollution, drugs, littering, violence and terror to our quaint and peaceful street.
Thank you. Item 6. Now I call on the leader to address the meeting and Councillor Bakhtiar to respond.
Can I stand to speak?
Sorry, before.
Oh, sorry.
Madam Deputy Mayor, in accordance with Standing Order 42, I wish to move that Standing Order 30 be suspended this evening to allow the leader and Councillor Bakhtiar up to 10 minutes each for their speeches.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Great, that's carried. So to speak for up to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. First of all, I'd like to say we wish you all another successful year as Deputy Madam Mayor, hopefully even more on the road, meeting people, dropping into events and representing us in the borough and further afield. And I really want to pay tribute to how Gerard and you and your predecessor have really modernised the role of mayor in the last 4 years. In fact, the role of the mayor in the mayor's office is a good touchstone for where this whole council is. We have made sweeping changes and modernised. Officers and councillors are more accessible and active in communities. We listen, we act on concerns and bring in new ideas. We're more connected to our communities, to organisations, to our local businesses than ever before. And over the last few months, some of the connections have had to be digital. But like you, Madam Deputy Mayor, we've been out, meeting people, helping people whenever the rules allowed. And I can remember Kim and Catherine riding around on scooters last summer to help community groups deliver food to those shielding, and members opposite, like Ian and Monica, helping to secure food and funding for food banks. Staff have worked hard to access funding from the government to aid economic survival in lockdown and economic recovery now the country is moving in the right direction. We have supported the NHS more than any other council in London in making sure testing and vaccines are front and centre for residents, with some of the highest testing figures in the country and our over 60s getting double jabbed in double time. We have sat with GPs and called people for them. We stepped up to fund school meals before any other borough in London. We supported community groups and organisations who've supported others tirelessly. We were first to bring planning meetings online, first to get library services online, and first to get them open again. We were first to help businesses with the necessary funding and paperwork so that they could compete with the rest of London and offer food and drink on our streets, an alfresco revolution. We aren't perfect, no council is, but we're on the road to improving our services further and further at pace and with continued drive and vigour. We have changed, and now we need to continually improve, day after day, month after month, year after year. Mr. Mayor, Madam Deputy Mayor, it looks like the end of the pandemic might be in sight, but with that comes fresh challenges. Nobody could have foreseen the way the COVID-19 pandemic swept through the nation, nor what was left in its wake. We endured isolation, lockdowns, job losses, and lost loved ones. And the impact will be with us now for many years to come. So, we have revised our council plan, our core set of objectives that tells us what is most important to our residents and what our priorities should be. Within this plan, we have allocated funding and outlined how we can further support communities to recover. In total, £8 million has been set to one side. We want communities to bounce back from the pandemic, and we are determined to build back better in this borough. We want to lay strong foundations over the coming months, build on the amazing community work that's already underway, and enable the people who live and work in this borough to have the very best opportunities in life. Together, we can create a greener, safer, and more equal borough. But, Madam Deputy Mayor, this is in a challenging context. We're trying to build homes in partnership with the Mayor of London. In fact, we're trying to build social housing and affordable homes at a faster rate than this council has ever tried before. We've met challenges along the way, but some sites are now on the verge of becoming a reality. We also want to make the homes we manage safer. But we're often at the mercy of a construction and health and safety industry that is in turmoil. What can and can't be trusted in terms of products, companies, designs, and construction has never been more confused than it is now. And at the same time, we have targets to meet, and more importantly, people waiting for a home. And we're going to have to find ways to save £28 million over the next 4 years to keep our books balanced. We're positive we can do this, and we hope we can take the majority of our residents with us. But the challenges over the next few years should not be underestimated. We have difficult decisions to be made. Madam Deputy Mayor, we have seen how events around the world and around the UK have shifted attention gradually away from the Grenfell tragedy. But not here. We remain steadfast in making sure that the Grenfell tragedy is our first priority, and I want families to know that we are here for them. We know the inquiry is slow and often painful in its detail. We wish it could be swifter, remove any unnecessary delays over the summer, for example, or Fridays, and give recommendations that make sure Grenfell never happens again. It needs more urgency. Council staff and councillors past and present have given evidence in recent months, and I have impressed on the organisation again. We must be honest, open, and abide by our commitments to the Hillsborough Charter. Families want justice, and the way that we conduct ourselves can either help or hinder that endeavour. Madam Deputy Mayor, after months of being apart, it was emotional to see families reunited again on the 4th anniversary last week, and I watched the powerful video of Grenfell United. There are clearly big decisions, community-led decisions, on the future of the tower and a fitting memorial. But the issues that the Grenfell tragedy raised, cladding, fire safety, the way we build homes, social housing, all of these now are national issues and on a huge scale. The families who maintain such dignity can be proud that their efforts, their fight, their actions continue to make sure construction companies and the government continue to listen and to hear them. Madam Deputy Mayor, ever since the Grenfell tragedy, you've heard me talk about change. Change at RBKC, change in the way we do things, the way we engage, the way we deliver services. Change at this council has progressed hugely. In most areas, this organisation is barely recognisable from the one that existed before June 2017. It's marked by the way we've handled the pandemic as one borough, with partners, with communities, with residents, with businesses, on the side of the people who live, work and visit here. We're now a council that moves quickly, a council that doesn't always assume it's right, an organisation that's more humble. We listen, we learn and we take action, or we explain honestly why we cannot. The evidence for this is in the decisions we've taken. Homes for key workers, £10 million for green initiatives, building new homes for social rent, the dedicated service, investing in schools for special education, investing in our high streets, and what we're planning to do next. Improve our customer services, make homes safer, help our most vulnerable after the pandemic, create job opportunities, more school streets and reducing speed limits, invest in CCTV and tackle antisocial behaviour, and be carbon neutral by 2030. Madam Deputy Mayor, our refreshed council plan builds on what we've done already. Importantly, it outlines exactly what our residents want from us. A borough that is a great place to live, work and learn. A borough and council that helps and supports the most vulnerable. A borough that's clean, healthy and safe. A unique place in London that people want to visit and explore. And when reflecting ahead of tonight, I thought about exactly what I'm most proud of. A new school for children who have incredibly challenging disabilities and a state-of-the-art primary school right next door. Our parks and open spaces and our commitment to them in staffing, in investment and in maintaining them. They played an absolutely crucial role in the pandemics as we came in and out of lockdowns, and our focus on the economy, a renewed sense of what we can achieve by working with businesses, big and small, for the good of our high streets, our culture and our hospitality sectors, all of which are key routes to employment. We are a council that has changed and a council that is focused on improving. Madam Deputy Mayor, and we are a council led by its communities. Thank you.
Good evening. I would like to congratulate you first, Madam Deputy Mayor, for your second term. 9 days ago was the Grenfell Tower Fire and National Disasters 4th anniversary. My colleagues and I went to the memorial and paid our respect around the tower and laid our wreath. The Grenfell Tower fire should have been declared as a national disaster by the government, and national resources should have been allocated to deal with its aftermath. This didn't happen for political reasons, and that's why exactly our traumatized residents are still suffering. 4 years on, and we still have many families from those who have been displaced because of the fire and are still living in temporary accommodation. The Council claims that more than 90% or more of those who have been displaced have been housed permanently and claim victory. What about the 5% of those who still live in temporary accommodation? This is a local and national failure by any standard. The Council has published its plan for 2019-2023 in a document. It is full of positive indicators of success and things that still needs doing. It seems that we do have clear plans on how to tick the right boxes to look good. There are some interesting information and statistics in the document. For instance, 1 in 4 children are living in poverty. This is really worrying, and it's a big warning at the same time. 77% of our students continue their education after completing their A-levels, which is great. But what is happening to the remaining 23%? 80% of our students secured places at higher education or further education or on apprenticeships. What is happening to the remaining 20%? The Council, in its plan, claims that our borough has the highest life expectancy in the country for men and second highest for women. This could be right in some areas, but not in the northern wards that we represent. 5.7% unemployment in the borough, and much more in the northern wards, some other parts in the borough. 25,700 households live in social housing, and 19,300 households rent privately, and 27,500 households own their homes, meaning that over 60% of our residents live in social and privately rented accommodations. Madam Deputy Mayor, it is the small percentage that we need to worry about, and that we should have provisions to accommodate their needs. Unemployment is linked to some crimes, and most crimes in the borough and in London are linked to drug dealing and its use, antisocial behavior, burglary, shoplifting. This crime leads to destabilizing families and breaking our communities. The Council needs to have provisions for large scale of CCTVs in crime hotspots and make the safety and security of its residents and tenants a priority. You don't need to know how some of the services are until you need them. We have many of our residents traumatized because of Grenfell Tower fire. And once a member of a family becomes mentally ill and they need attention, they will soon come to the hard realization of discovering that in our system, we do not take the family as a one complete unit. We do not provide support for families of those whose members are being classed as mentally ill. We don't have an adequate prevention measure to stop families from falling apart if they have mentally ill members. This needs to be addressed, investigated, and resolved. If the Council is looking to find solutions, they need to act swiftly. You claim that Grenfell Tower fire shaped you, but that is not reflected in your actions, and our residents can't see any major changes either. In fact, you and your Prime Minister are doing the exact opposite. The Conservative government did not learn any lesson from Grenfell Tower tragedy. Instead, they have introduced the planning white paper, which scrubs the Section 107 completely. Section 106 is a power tool that Council uses to attach conditions to any planning application permission after listening to objecting residents and to make sure that their rights and interests are protected when given permission to a new development. The plan white paper in simple terms is handing over the state to property developers who are mainly the Conservative Party donors, while our residents and their residents' associations will lose the power to object to major developments in the same way they were enjoying until now. You are judged by your acts, not by your promises. If you want to be seen that you have learned lessons from the tragedy, then you need to be focused on the small percentage of our residents who are left behind, and to look at our families as one complete unit that needs to be protected. The Council needs to consider and allocate funds for those students who are lagging behind and pay for their one-to-one tutorials and tuitions. The students that I'm talking about are members of families who cannot afford to pay 20 to 30 pounds an hour for one-to-one tuitions to raise their academic levels, because their families will need that money to pay for food, heating, and internet and other bills. We need to invest in the Boro's children and treat them like our own. The country, the world, and the humanity is in crisis. That's why we see war and conflict in many places. That's why 1 in 4 children in poverty in the richest borough in the country. It is easy to throw money and food at people, but not easy to help those who need supplementary education because of their personal and family circumstances. Our traumatized residents in the north of the borough need to have access to free internet and leisure center entry. The council should turn the crime and antisocial behavior and burglary hotspots into safe places for our residents, as safe as the safest spot in the borough, by investing and installing fixed network of CCTVs. Madam Deputy Mayor, the council employs over 2,200 people, and yet around 19% of the council workers are local, who are filling basic positions. All senior positions are filled by people who don't live in the borough, and this is still happening 4 years after Grenfell Tower fire. In the council's 2019-2023 plan, I don't see any intentions from the council to provide a separate and individual and itemized recycle bins. We don't see rewarding plans to encourage our residents to use separate itemized recycle bins, which has been successfully in place in many countries in Europe for decades. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 7, order of business. In accordance with standing orders, I rule that the order of business be as printed in the agenda. Reports from the leadership team. Item 8, reports from the leadership team. I call upon the leader to move the reception of the report and Councillor Taylor-Smith to second.
I'd like to move it, Madam Deputy.
And I'd like to second, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. To call paragraph 1, medium-term financial strategy. Councillor Wheel, would you like to speak to the report?
Make a very brief introduction and then listen to any comments from colleagues. Just to say, this is our approach to trying to produce a balanced budget over the next 4 years. I have to say to colleagues who will have noticed for themselves, it's built on a sort of tissue of uncertainty, in the sense that there are so many variables, perhaps now more than ever before out there, that it makes it very difficult to work out what challenge we face, except realising that we do face a huge challenge. Just to mention some of the variables: the continuing effect of COVID, inflation, our level of government grants, which we never know till right towards the end of the year. So I hope colleagues will think this is a realistic approach. I think the main thing to remember about it is that it's very, perhaps newly, totally tied to the council plan and allocating our resources in a way that we've promised to our residents and is reflected in our council plan. And it has outlines four main approaches to addressing what we think will be the £28.5 million budget gap over the next 4 years. I hope colleagues as well have found this an easy presentation of of the subject, and the fact that it has a number of shortish appendices, which I hope people find clear and written in clear language, because I know officers have done a lot of work on trying to improve it year on year, but I'm always very, very open to suggestions on how we could improve the way we communicate this. That's all I had to say.
Thank you. Would any members like to speak on this? Councillor.
Thanks, Madam Deputy Mayor. The medium-term strategy is the key financial document to align the resources to deliver the priorities while as delivering balanced budget. It looks at a longer term over the next 4 years, but also sets the foundations for the setting of next year's budget that will start in the autumn. I support the look of the longer term, and I know we need to take a similar approach if we are going to manage the financial challenges. Over the next 4 years, there is a budget gap of £28 million, of which 7.6 is for the next year. This is based on the information and assumptions that have been made at present. There are a number of risks that means that the budget gap may be more because of expected population reduction as sets in the report, government support, long-term impact of COVID, which is more likely now. This means that either we need to increase our income or reduce our spending. Useful to see that the council considering how it's going to think through the transition program. We are generally supportive of the overall approach, but there is not enough details, so we look forward to receive further updates to see what is proposed. There are some areas that we would like to specifically comment on. We have a strong voluntary sector, and we hope that we can build on this strong relationships rather than cutting services. While we want to protect our frontline staff, we ask for a serious review of the number of senior officers that we have in the council. We need to reconsider the bi-borough and tri-borough management sharing option to overcome the challenges that we are facing if that leads to further saving. We recognize income generation is important, but it must not be at the expense of our most vulnerable or those already facing extreme hardship. We must review our contracts. 230 million is a large sum. We need to look at what our services are delivering, how we could get the best value of money. I have heard that we are high spending in some areas and support the work of look at how we can deliver the same outcomes at a lower cost, but want to ensure we continue to support our most vulnerable. There are priorities in some areas that are missing from the council plan. These are key areas where we need to look at to spending and more, and we will do that by spending less in other areas. We could save on reviewing our contracts and cutting some of the senior positions in the council management structure, and spend more on one-to-one tuition for our needy students, and pay for free internet connections for the vulnerable families and their children, which is being used for education purposes. Capital spending. We know that capital investment is an important and day-to-day spending, and we support the additional investment into new homes and the council's housing stock. But 614 million is a large sum. We welcome the review that is underway, and we will be undertaking our own review to ensure we invest and spend in the areas that's important to us. In conclusion, we are supportive of the strategy and the greater link with the council plan, and look forward to more detailed proposals that are emerging over the next few months. At the same time, we will be working with officers to develop our draft budget, which recognizes financial challenges, but ensures that we spend in line with our priorities, some of which are set out in the council plan, but also those which are missing. Thank you.
Any other members wish to speak? Councillor Wheel? Councillor Randall?
I'd like to back up Councillor Wheel and her presentation of the report, although I'd just like to add that back to Councillor Bakhtiar's points that we do provide for IT and internet services to our children, the most vulnerable who need it. We've been supplying that for up to just over 12 months now, and the medium financial report, while it doesn't go into that detail, I'd just like to reassure him that we do that, and anyone who wishes to have that is very happy to approach me or the portfolio in order to look into that further. Thank you.
To acknowledge Councillor Bakhtiar's response, which lines up very clearly with the sense of direction that we're looking at. So thank you for that support. I know that there are details that you will of course want to look at differently in your own budget, but you acknowledge, like we do, the number of risks that are ahead of us, which we have to face as a council and can only face working together. And of course there's not much detail now. That'll come as the budgeting process emerges. And I just wanted to comment on a couple of things that you mentioned. The voluntary sector is front and centre in our transition programme and are working with them, so we're absolutely right to recognise that, but we accept that too. You talked about senior management, and as you know, we are going through this DMA or spans and layers process at the moment, looking at exactly that. And it's not just important because we don't want too many managers, it's also important for empowering our staff who mustn't be too overmanaged but must be empowered to make decisions and to act with a sense of responsibility within the organisation, and that's something I feel very strongly about. So I'm glad you touched on it, and no doubt it'll be something you want to look at more closely. As you know, we have a new procurement strategy in place, and that is absolutely acknowledging the point that you made about the importance of the enormous amount of money we spend on our contracts. And it's not just about procuring them properly, it's about monitoring them properly and making sure we continue to get value out of money out of them. So I look forward to working with you over the next year, and thank you for your contribution and thoughts on this. And I will just conclude by recommending the medium-term financial strategy to the Council.
Thank you. The Council is asked to approve the medium-term financial strategy 2022-23 to 2025-26, including the adoption of the planning contribution. Is that agreed? I declare it carried.
Madam Mayor, the Labour Group is abstaining for the record.
Okay. So I'm calling paragraph 2, urgent key decisions. I ask the Council to note any key decisions taken. So item 9, reports from Council side committees. The annual report of the Audit and Transparency Committee. In the absence of the Chair, Councillor Wason, I call on Councillor Lindsay to remove reception of the report and Councillor Williams to second.
I beg to move the reception of the report, Madam.
I beg to second, Madam Deputy.
Thank you.
Not be long, and I do not intend to say very much that is in the report, other than to remind colleagues that Nabil earlier talked about some of the money due to spent at Grenfell. The Council is spending some £50 million, which is a large amount of money. It is material financially in an accounting sense. It is also material or significant politically, given the high priority. We have and are working on getting a full breakdown so that we can see how much has actually been spent on what, and so that we can see what the outputs are. It is an iterative process. We will be working on it for the next number of meetings, realistically to the end of the year. And at the last meeting in May, one of the independent members suggested we have a joint meeting with the OSC to look both at the numbers, how much has been spent, and what the outputs are together. That has been agreed by the chairman of the OSC. I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this? No, I ask the Council to note the report. Item 10, matters referred by scrutiny committees. There are 2 reports referred by scrutiny committees to this meeting. The first report relates to educational support provided by the Council to pupils affected by the Grenfell tragedy. I call on Councillor Evans to move the reception of the report and Councillor Adrian to second.
I move.
And would you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity this evening to present to you and to all members as Chair of the Family Services Select Committee, the recommendations report, which is a result of a review undertaken by the Select Committee and agreed at our meeting on the 21st of April. In addition to our robust scrutiny work, which we have carried out, bipartisan, I would like to say, with excellent co-optees, the Family Services Select Committee over the past municipal year has included the following work: scrutinizing the safeguarding of children in our borough, the impact of COVID-19 in schools, and ongoing work reviewing child welfare, and the impact of domestic abuse on children during the pandemic. Councillor Durian led the committee's work in reviewing a highly salient issue to the families affected by the Grenfell tragedy: the education support that the Council provided to pupils affected. From the inquiry, we are making a number of recommendations to the lead member to ensure the long-term future of the support provided to affected children. We recommend improved communications, improved information and governance of the support, advocating for multi-year funding for schools and providers, and for a wide range of community support to be available to children. I ask Council members to agree the recommendations to this item and refer the report to my colleague, Councillor Josh Rendell, lead member for Family and Children's Services. And I look forward to receiving a response to the report's recommendations from the lead member in due course. Select committee members will continue our commitment to do first-rate work on behalf of Kensington and Chelsea children and their families. Grenfell remains a priority in our work. We discuss and review Grenfell, and we will continue to do this at every meeting. You have a commitment from our Select Committee. We also see how the pressures and challenges posed by the health emergency of COVID-19 are affecting our communities, and we continue to focus on performance and provision for our children. Thank you for your support, and I look forward to a response from the lead member.
Thank you. Councillor Nell, do you wish to speak? No? Okay. No one else speaking? Councillor Rendell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. And I'd like to thank the Select Committee and all its members for the recommendations presented. Obviously, we're going to accept those in full, and I'm really pleased to update the Council that we're already actioning some of those recommendations, such as better communication, especially those arranging community support basis of the schools, which we recently passed at our last leadership team meeting for emotional health and wellbeing support, and of course making it a bit clearer for residents and those accessing it where they can find support especially on the website, which we're currently updating at the minute. But I will write back to the Chair and all members of the Select Committee in due course on how we're going with each individual recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Will?
I really just wanted to say how much I also welcome these recommendations. Immediately after those terrible days after Grenfell, our schools did the most extraordinary job holding families together, and we owe them a debt of gratitude for that. But we also shortly thereafter, and it was at the suggestion of Councillor Powell, who used to sit on that side of the chamber, that we set up the Grenfell Education Fund, and we did that really to consider the long-term welfare of all these children, because we knew it wouldn't be a 2-year or a 5-year or a 10-year job. It would be a much longer task. But I think we recognise, and I think this report probably highlights, that how that fund would work and what those families would need would change over time, and what we needed to do immediately would be different after 4 years as we are now. And so I really welcome this, looking again at that and how we can best continue to support our schools and families. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Evans, do you wish to sum up?
Well, we'd like to hear from Councillor Dorian. Isn't he presenting the paper?
Councillor Duran? Yes.
Better? No? Okay. Well, yes, thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. And first of all, it's a pleasure to be able to address you and meet with colleagues in person once again after a year of lockdowns. Thank you to Councillor Evans for introducing our scrutiny work on the educational support provided by the Council to children and young people affected by the Grenfell tragedy, and also to Councillor Rendell for his response on that. I think from everything the committee heard, it is clear that there has been some good work done here, and we do need to make sure that the right level of individual support can continue to be embedded both in local schools and in community settings over coming years. And those who would benefit from that support can continue to access it, to continue to succeed in their education, and that the voice of the child remains central to everything we do. On that note, Madam Deputy Mayor, we would have found it valuable, I think, as a committee, to have heard perhaps more first-hand accounts from families, both parents and, where appropriate, children themselves, to better inform our recommendations. The circumstances of the pandemic clearly made that harder than usual, and I would note that even in normal times it can be challenging for scrutiny to obtain the level of engagement from, after all, busy families, especially if other departments of the Council have already been doing similar consultation. Nevertheless, we did hear, I think, some really valuable evidence from schools and from a range of community organisations. In particular, the 5 North Kensington primary schools presented a compelling report that made the case for how the support that they have built in-house, so to speak, offers strong educational support to pupils, and that funding for these should continue in line with that need. We did have questions raised about some of the therapeutic services that have been commissioned, and I think though there is ample evidence to support their benefit, that perhaps does need to be better communicated and individual needs continue to be recognised. So our recommendations in the report target all of those key areas, such as the dedicated service, support in school and community settings, how information about all those services is actually communicated to residents, and also how the Council itself can perhaps better engage with local resident groups and other interested organisations in North Kensington about this kind of educational support, and perhaps try and fund a wider range of local organisations as well. And I acknowledge that the lead member has already replied positively in many of these areas already. So just to conclude, thank you to everyone who took the time to send us their submissions, to fellow members of the Scrutiny Committee, and of course our scrutiny officers for their help throughout. I think we've reached a good set of recommendations that help build upon what the Council has already been doing, along with all the partner organisations, to support children and young people affected by the tragedy. And I think after a year of lockdowns, this work is just as important as ever. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else before Councillor Evans? No? Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Councillor Dorian. You and your group did an excellent job, and I think what was important that everyone can see the extent of the provision, and yet there is room for change and improvement as always. And I like that you recommended that after this COVID pandemic, we will be able to have more exchange with the children themselves and listen to the voice of the child. And thank you to Councillor Rendell. We look forward to hearing your written response. Thank you very much.
Is the recommendation to refer the report and recommendations to Councillor Rendell adopted? I declare it carried. The second scrutiny report relates to housing safety in healthy homes. I call on Councillor Ali to remove the reception of the report and Councillor Hammond to second.
I beg to move, Madam Deputy Mayor.
I beg to second, ma'am.
Thank you. Councillor Ali.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor, and if I take the opportunity to congratulate you for being re-elected again. I'm sure it's been a tough year, but looking forward to see you on the road and hopefully many visiting to take part both in the north and the south of the borough and fulfilling your duties. In any way, we welcome you in Delgado Ward.
Thank you.
Madam Deputy Mayor, it has been a tough year and a very challenging year for the housing and communities. In fact, for any member of our residents, because of the COVID-19 and the lockdowns, we have been holding almost everything basically we've done virtually. However, it has been a good year, and the recommendations that I'm getting from members of the public, as well as the lead members, the relevant lead members for housing and communities, said it was a tough scrutiny sessions, but fair scrutiny sessions, and I'm sure that it says something about the return of much weighted the Labour group to come back to the scrutiny, and we had to come back because of the COVID-19 and to scrutinize the council leadership for our residents during these difficult times. The scrutiny sessions that we had from the housing and communities have been diverse. We managed to really cover from Grenfell, from what happened to the Grenfell recovery and the continuance of Grenfell recovery in terms of housing and communities. But we also have covered what was meant to be first a COVID-19 recovery, but later changed it into COVID-19 response, because we have been in and out of a lockdown. Madam Deputy Mayor, the scrutiny sessions that we had, we've managed to invite researchers from University College London to give us a talk about the prosperity and how to make our borough, our wonderful borough, to make the most prosperous place to live, work and study for our communities. And we've also invited the community food bank leaders just to make sure that we cover all angles of our responsibilities. So the food bank leaders that come from across the borough have actually been taking part and give the relevant feedback to the relevant leadership members to talk about the food bank and the need of food bank and the increase of food bank and the food hunger in the borough since COVID-19. We've also invited I would say we've taken the championship for this. We've invited diverse residents from across the borough to make sure that their voices are being heard in the council and their voices being heard in the scrutiny that we have been doing. We've managed to cover items including from repairs to the new homes, and that was diverse, from repairs of the existing homes of the council-owned properties, but also the new homes being built. We have been scrutinizing them. More or less, we have also set up a working group, and this is what we're here for today. I'm not going to talk about specifically the recommendations. I will leave to Councillor Greg Hammond to speak about the recommendations, but the reason we have done, we have selected to a working group for RBKC Healthy Homes was, for the first time, we wanted to have a working group that not only look into the council, to begin with the council-owned properties, but also housing associations, as well as in the future to look into the privately rented homes, so that we can give every child in the borough the best possible start of life. And I think that's a duty that we owe to the members of our residents who have put us this privileged position to represent them. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the chair of the working group, Councillor Greg Hammond, whom I'm delighted to say we've worked very hard to make sure that we work as a team, and it was wonderful to see the number of councillors have been contributing, as well as the backbench councillor, Councillor Judith Blakeman, for her support, who later joined the committee, who I'm sure will be speaking later on. This gives me an opportunity, as Madam Deputy Mayor, to thank the councillors who have resigned from the housing and communities. We had a wonderful team of councillors who really dedicated to what they were doing, and I thank each and every one of them for not looking into their colours or specifically for their the party they're representing, but working together as a group and working together on behalf of our residents. And to thank the councillors Hamish Adorian, Councillor Robert Freeman, and Councillor Mohammed Bakhtiar, who's sitting next to me, who's now the leader of the Labour group. The last year has been tough, but we've managed to do well, and I would also like to welcome the new councillors who've joined the world-class scrutiny team, I would say, and that's Councillor Ahmed Zencoat and Councillor Arian Arati, as well Councillor Alison Jackson, who is not here today, I'm sure, but he will be delighted to welcome when we meet. And finally, we would never have done what we have done, Madam Deputy Mayor, if it was not the support of our outstanding officers who've been in and out, and I would like the council to join us to thank for their great work and what they have been doing, and I wish the council leaders to accept what they have done and thank them for their continuous and accepted the report, and hopefully looking forward to hearing from the lead member for housing who was relevant to this working group, but hopefully the next year we'll have the communities team doing a working group, but this time I look forward to hearing a response from the lead member for his contribution to this. Madam Deputy Mayor, I keep saying Madam Mayor, perhaps maybe one day, but Madam Deputy Mayor, thank you very much, and I end here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor, and may I also congratulate you on your reappointment, and you're, of course, always welcome to cross the street from your ward into mine. May I also thank Councillor Ali for his introduction, and to thank the members of the working group who joined me last year, Councillor Bakhtiar, Councillor Bennett and Councillor Blakeman. And I'd also like to thank our scrutiny officers who helped us, Ryan McGowan, who was with us for the research phase of the project and did the first draft of the report, and then Hannah Davenport, who picked up the proofreading stage, which is always a challenge when I'm in charge of it, because I'm Mr. Red Pen, as she now knows and other people know. And may I also say thank you on record to the officers of the Housing Department and the Environmental Health Department who assisted us throughout in a most productive way. The methodology of the report, obviously it was a constrained year last year with the pandemic. We did an extensive literature review at the beginning of the study, and we initiated a resident survey. This was framed deliberately in a very wide manner to allow the opportunity for unknown issues to be raised. And indeed our recommendations on building security and CCTV emerged from that survey. And the survey report also, the responses to the survey also gave us the ideas for questions that we raised as a working group with the Housing Providers Conference that we held in February. That was a very successful conference. We invited 11 of the known housing associations to attend it, and 6 of them did so, along with the council. We had apologies from one housing association, technical problems from another, and subsequent engagement from a third, which left only 2 that ignored us altogether. But it was a very productive day. We had a lot of engagement from both ourselves and other councillors who attended on the day, and it was a great opportunity to put questions to the registered providers. And quite a few of our recommendations in the report emerged from that engagement. And we particularly welcome the work the Council's doing to further the liaison with registered providers, including the forum that I think is meeting monthly, and one of those will be in public in future years. Now, as a Select Committee scrutiny report, we were actively looking for trouble, and of course we did find some in terms of both physical risks and risk to health, particularly damp and mould. If we'd had more time, we would have explored in some detail how this council exercises its duties under the Housing Act 2004, using the Housing Health and Safety Rating System, but we did run out of time to do that, so that's one of the follow-up recommendations for the Select Committee to do this year. It is impossible to quantify how, from what we did, how good or how bad RBKC's social housing portfolio is. The survey we did was too small a size, and the results were anecdotal. It was useful to us, but you can't draw definitive conclusions from it. And the MHCLG statistics that we looked at are interesting but full of holes. So, for example, they appear to show a deteriorating position in the RBKC social housing stock in the years since we took over from the TMO. But actually that probably reflects, almost certainly reflects, more honest reporting, as the significant holes in the TMO's management are uncovered. The statistics also show some boroughs with no problems at all, when those boroughs have been subject to some very significant public scandals in their housing, such as Croydon. So the statistics do need to be taken with a pinch of salt, and we have to look at the individual details as we look at individual properties in the portfolio. But the Council's, I do want to commend and end by commending the Council's significant investment and the future plans in the housing maintenance area. There's a mountain to climb. The Council recognises that, we recognise that, but we would expect the significant investment that's being made and is going to be made to bear fruit in terms of significantly improving safety and health standards in our housing stock over the coming years. Thanks, ma'am.
Thank you, Councillor Hammond. Councillor Blakeman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. This is a good report, and I can say that because I only joined the working group halfway through. And I hope that the lead member for Housing and Grenfell Recovery will accept all recommendations. Can I particularly commend recommendation 2, which is to include the entrance security to the list of physical safety risks in the next iteration of the Council's housing policy. And I have very strong reasons for stating that. Now, in the ward that I represent, which is Notting Dale, 41% approximately is made up of RBKC social housing. And as far as the existing housing is concerned, although, as this report points out, it's not perfect yet, we think broadly the direction is correct. 30% approximately is housing association property. Now we've got 2 notorious housing associations, London and Quadrant, which didn't respond to the invitation to attend our meeting, and Notting Hill Genesis. Both of those have in fact become more of a property developer than a provider of social housing. However, I don't really want to go on about them at the moment. What I want to condemn is Peabody. Now, I have some sympathy with those housing associations who said that the older properties are more difficult to make safe and healthy. I have no sympathy whatsoever with housing associations such as Peabody that actually have new properties that they then refuse to take action on them. And I'm referring in particular to the Peabody Moor West development, which was opened in about 2016 on the Silchester estate. This estate was riddled with defects from the word go. Residents raised their complaints from the word go during the defects period. Funnily enough, every complaint was ignored until after the defects period was over, so that the shared owners and owners were liable to pay for any remedial actions. And one particular concern relates to the entrances, which were especially poor both to the car park and to the main entrances to the blocks. Now, at the forum in February, Peabody promised to address these, but nothing seems to have happened. And in the meantime, antisocial behaviour has got worse and worse on that estate. It's not just now intruders smoking drugs in communal areas and homeless people sleeping in corridors and gangs gathering, but the police are now heavily involved, and they are very, very concerned about what's happening on this estate. Residents have been threatened with knives. That's not nice. A police officer has been threatened with a knife. And the police now want immediate action. They've sent a very, very stiff email to Peabody. I haven't seen what Peabody's response to that is yet. But Peabody's response to the complaints, which were submitted in February. It is now June. Their response is that it will take over 6 weeks to address the entrance issues, as the parts have only just been procured. So with regard to recommendation 7, personally, I would like to see not just the complaints procedures better publicised, but also to be made more effective. Had the Peabody complaints procedure been effective in the first instance, this would not have happened at Moor West. And again, recommendation 8, again, is very important, but the commitments given at the last forum have not yet been honoured. So again, I would hope that if we have a registered provider forum meeting, that again, it will be effective. So thank you for the report. Thank you, Councillor Hammond, for chairing it, and I urge Councillor Taylor-Smith to accept all the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Blakeman. Councillor Taylor-Smith?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I think just prior to responding on the working group report, I would just like to thank the Chairman, Councillor Ali, for his chairmanship of the committee during the year. I smile. I also want to acknowledge his stamina as well on some of these meetings, etc. But they've always been very good meetings, and I very much welcome the fact that we've had a lot of people coming and contributing to it. I think just one thing I would like to just say on the committee is particularly given that your scrutiny I've taken you through in some detail on those survivors of the Grenfell fire who still remain in temporary accommodation. I always find it particularly upsetting, and it was referred to in the new chairman of the Labour Group's meeting, of the criticism that is levied against this council for the 6 people who are still in temporary accommodation, and the default of the Labour Group that this is a result of some kind of uncaring or incompetence on behalf of the council, because obviously this is something which, Councillor Ali, we've been through in great detail. You're well aware of the circumstances of each of those cases. And I wish to really record that it is a reflection that 4 years have elapsed. I would have desperately liked to have seen the 6 people rehoused along with all the other 194 people that were rehoused, but it reflects the care and consideration and the lack of pressure that we put on the individuals in making that decision. And I just really wanted to record that. Going on to the Housing, Safety, Health Economics Working Group, first of all, I'd again like to thank the Select Committee for their report. It's very thought-provoking, and I'd like to thank very much the Chairman, Councillor Hammond, and his committee, including you, Judith, for pulling together this report. I think before I respond to the recommendations individually, I'd also like to just yet again note that the Council has committed to lead the way in health and safety, and it's one of our key commitments in our housing strategy and in our health and safety policies. And I welcome any support the committee wishes to offer in helping us identify and meet this objective. I also like to introduce each of the recommendations in 3 parts. Those that relate to recommendations on housing management, those that relate to the way that we work with housing association, and then finally those that relate to single issues. So on housing management, I mean, the report really much charts the journey that we've been on from a housing management perspective in no small extent. Our stock condition surveys raised a lot more problems than those that were identified by the TMO, and you only have to look at the quantum of our investment, the proposed investment in our stock condition, and that's outlined in the report. So getting to an accurate position and being transparent and taking necessary steps to overcome them is an essential step that this council is taking. As a leadership team, we have implemented recommendation number 2, your favourite, identified one in terms of entrance security, Judith, with our housing asset management strategy, and this is the right place for it. On recommendation 3, we are conducting a CCTV review. It is an integral part of our capital improvement programme, and I'll be very happy to report on this on a very regular basis, including the proposed deadline that has been set. On housing associations, the relationships with our housing associations need to be somewhat collegiate. And if we're going to achieve a good outcome, particularly as souring relationships could have potential of impact on in terms of our nomination. This is going to be very much a carrot and stick with our housing associations. And we're very much committed to forging closer relationships, and we have invested in a dedicated liaison officer that has now been appointed to work specifically with our housing associations. So that's not to say that we should not challenge housing associations on their performance where we see issues, because clearly there are issues here. And I'm sure that it's in our housing associations' interest, as well as ours, that we provide an excellent service to our residents. Therefore, I'm very happy to accept some of the recommendations in the report, in particular recommendations 4 and 5 about asking the housing associations to review their approach to CCTV and providing a named contact for councillors is an excellent idea. However, the recommendation number 7, noting that housing associations in the borough that they do have a complaints process at the moment on their website, and perhaps we are better to target those where they don't have those or how they might be improved. On recommendation 6, we already have members' training sessions. We've had one already of how to deal with complaints, and it makes a lot of sense to do that again and once we've established primary points of contact as far as the associations are concerned. Recommendation 8 again, looks like a very good idea, and I'd be happy very much in terms of explore how that worked. So that really leaves 2 further recommendations, recommendations 1 and recommendations 9. On recommendations 1, this is really an environmental health area. It's not a housing management area. However, the HHSRS legislation, I do believe, is flawed, and it may well be that we want to go further, and I acknowledge the comments of Councillor Hammond acknowledging that more work needs to be done on this. On recommendation number 9, again, I'm very keen to adopt the highest standards of health and safety in the Council on New Homes Programme, and it's very much our commitment. So I think really just to conclude on the next steps, I will write my letters to the Housing Association next week, as per the recommendations, and I'll also write a much more formal response to the committee's proposals as well. And as I have gone through, many of them have been very much accepted, but I very much welcome again the committee's ongoing review of how Housing Capital Programme is progressing, and indeed an item that is fundamental to our ambition to lead the way on health and safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor-Smith. Would Councillor Ali or Councillor Hammond like to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I will ask Councillor Hammond to sum up the points that Councillor Taylor-Smith, the Deputy Leader and Lead for Member for Housing, mentioned about the recommendations. But let me respond to some of it first, his earlier comments, and then hopefully Councillor Greg Hammond will do after me sum up. I thank the Deputy Leader for his kind words in terms of his stamina and what we have been through for the year, and I also like to thank him for ever present whenever we call him for the meeting to scrutinize his portfolio. And having said that, I think if I were to speak about the scrutiny issues, I cannot put a hat on Labour group issues. When I'm on the scrutiny table or anything to do with the scrutiny, I do scrutinize and I do chair the meetings as a member of this council chamber, not as the Labour group, and I was not elected to do that. So in terms of that, I think we will defy the scrutiny and the Labour group response. But now putting on the Labour group hat, if you will allow me, since we're not doing the scrutiny, I think the councils for 4 years on not having all the Grenfell survivors and all the Grenfell bereaved families who are now still in temporary accommodation, whether it's whatever temporary accommodation they may be, but still not have a permanent solution. I think not just the Labour group, but any person or any group or any organization will feel it's a failure of leadership. And I don't think it is something against you personally as a councillor, Kim Taylor-Smith. It's the law of the universe. One cannot accept, I don't remember whether it's one prime minister or 2 prime ministers ago, we had a prime minister come down to North Kensington and she said we'll be rehouse everyone by a week or 21 days or so on. Now we have 4 years on, and Grenfell survivors and we have seen some of them still now are asking for services to be done correctly. And I think it's not a Labour group issue, it's a humanity issue. And I think this council should own, when we fail, we have to understand we fail and we continue to progress and move forward, not to come back. I do feel your point when you said we are, as a leader, you could be between a rock and a hard place, but leaders make the other side soft. So I would say to you, let's get this job done and get all the people rehoused, and hopefully this issue will not come back to the council and anyone to talk about it in the future. I think that will be the way forward. But if I go back to other issues in terms of the housing associations Councillor Blakeman has mentioned, I think the housing associations not responding to the residents is an issue. It's an issue that has been happening for a long time, and it's an issue that we will continue to look into the scrutiny system and hopefully invite the chief executives of those housing associations or housing providers who are not listening. For your information, Madam Deputy Mayor, I'm not saying a name, but I have dealt with a casework from day one or second day that I've been elected, and today I'm still dealing with it, and that's a Clarion housing. It's a dumb issue. It's housing that is fit not for human habitation. So the Clarion, and similar to Peabody, has completely ignored whatever we do. What shall we do? Shall we take them to court? I don't know what to do from here, but we'll still continue to find ways to deal with housing providers who are not respecting our residents, and mainly the respect of residents from the north of the borough, where most of the housing associations are. And I think in terms of the points that you have mentioned, Councillor Kim Taylor-Smith, of the recommendation, this is ongoing work, and hopefully we will hear from you in writing what you have just said in the council, and when we hear from you in writing, the former chair of that working group will respond to you, as well as myself and the new select committee. And we look forward to scrutiny that is fit for 21st century, not a scrutiny that asks the leadership what is good and what is not bad. We're here to scrutinize on behalf of our residents, and we will continue to do so. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. Councillor Hammond, do you wish to say anything?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Just briefly, and may I start by recognising Councillor Blakeman's comments about housing associations and the struggles she's had with the ones she described. And I think many of us in this chamber will recognise those difficulties that she's described. And within the, and indeed Councillor Ali mentioned a second example. And within the Select Committee and within our working group, we've worked very constructively in a cross-party way to address these issues because they are important issues for residents north, south and east and west in the borough. May I thank the Deputy Leader for his constructive response to the list of recommendations. It was very positive to hear that a couple of them have already been accepted. In terms of number one on the HHSRS, yes, I suspect that it is indeed a flawed system, and I think we do want to explore it in some more detail, recognising that it is actually an environmental health issue and doesn't come under his own portfolio, but it is very important to housing, and I think we do need to know a little bit more about it and how we move forward from there. But it is most welcome that the Council has accepted those recommendations and his detailed answers to them tonight, and we look forward to seeing his written response very soon. Thanks, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hammond. Is the recommendation to refer the report and recommendations to Councillor Taylor-Smith adopted? Yes. I declare it carried. Item 11, questions to lead members. Question 1, I call on Councillor Wade to read her question printed on the agenda page.
This has taken a little time to get here to ask this question. Please can there be guarantees that there'll be an independent survey and publicly published report on the usage of all materials at Barnbury School, including their manufacture, make-up and usage within the construction of the site?
Councillor Taylor-Smith.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Wade, for bringing this question to us. So, our housing strategy and health and safety policy commits to provide the highest possible standard, and that is what we aim to achieve with all council buildings, including the Bulby School and the Kensington Queensmill School. And so when the issues were highlighted, we conducted an immediate review of the building materials used on both schools and also, importantly, everywhere. And our review has confirmed that these buildings are safe, recognising that in addition to meeting both the most stringent of fire safety regulations, we've also taken further steps of safety precautions with the schools, including installing a sprinkler system in both of the schools. And we've published full details, together with the documentation of this review, on the council website, which is available for inspection. So the question calls for an independent survey, and this was an option that was offered to the governors of both schools. Queensmill commissioned an independent survey and have confirmed that the appropriateness of the arrangements in the building they're happy with. However, the Academy Trust felt that the language used in their report was too technical to be used on their website. So they've now commissioned a further survey, which they hope to publish very shortly. So I fully understand the concerns of the parents, the community, the councillors across this house, and that we've been in constant contact with the heads of both schools to keep them informed. And we've also communicated directly with the Bulby governors to update them on the developments. And it's fair to we have to recall that the parents are very excited to attend the new schools. We're going to have 52 SEND children who are due to attend Queensmill for our first ever dedicated school to service their needs, and a commitment that we can be rightly proud of. And organisations such as Full of Life are also very keen to see the school opening in September. So I hope that by acting swiftly and transparently, we have helped to alleviate these concerns, and we can all look forward to pupils attending their first day at a brand new school. And finally, we have taken steps to make sure that this does not happen again by passing a key decision that enables this council not to use insulation materials manufactured by some of the main contractors used for the Grenfell Tower refurbishment. This is something that this council has done that you won't see other councils or governments have done at the moment. So no materials for these film firms will be used in the Grenfell nursery, for example. No further comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor-Smith. Councillor Wade, do you have a follow-up question?
Can the Deputy Leader confirm that the cladding situation at the Kensington Aldridge Academy, which is understood to be the same as used on Grenfell Tower, has also gone through the same level of scrutiny? Thank you.
I can absolutely assure Councillor Wade that as I'm a Governor at KA, we did an independent report, went through all of this very carefully immediately after Grenfell, and in fact I think those reports are still on the KA website if you'd like to look.
Thank you, Councillor Will. We're just going to go to Councillor Bakhtiar's question, but I think I'm just going to swap over with the Mayor who's just arrived. But go to your question in a minute. Yes, why don't you read your question, please? Or
you tell me whatever you want.
Up to you. It's quite a long question, isn't it?
Okay.
Maybe
okay.
Just draw our attention to it, perhaps.
Okay. I have been a member of the Planning Application Committee since May 2014 and become aware of a problem in our planning department's function when it comes to 1. Officers advising applicants on how to make their applications acceptable and for it to be approved by the Planning Application Committee as a service paid for by the applicants. 2nd, no such advice was available to our objecting residents and residents' associations. That's why I personally brought this point to the Council's attention multiple times in the past 4 years. And I have been asking for creation of a new department separate from the planning department, to provide free planning and legal advice separate from the planning department for our objecting residents and residents associations. I had asked for it again in my speech in March in the Labour Alternative Budget proposal, when I asked to appoint 1 to 2 officers to provide free legal and planning advice in major application cases. After that, I have approached Councillor Thalitides to work on a cross-party motion to rectify this. 3 days later, I was advised by him that an officer had been appointed for this purpose back in December 2020. Our residents, the Labour Group and I, would like to know how and why this happened. Was it deliberate? What was the process in which this officer was appointed by? Did the Council inform all of our residents' associations about this new free service? Or was it done to prevent the Labour Group of councillors to claim that they have achieved something for the residents? Who is responsible here? What is the logic and justification of this act? We need to understand what went wrong and learn from it. Thanks.
Councillor Thalitides, do you wish to reply to that, please?
I do indeed, and can I start by congratulating the Madam Deputy Mayor for her very fluent debut behind the chair, and welcome you, Mr. Mayor. You have nothing to fear. You are also a
My apologies for late arrival. I've been on mayoral duties.
I also want to begin by paying tribute to Councillor Bakhtiar, the leader of the Labour Group. He has been a great ally and champion on policy issues in the planning portfolio, like the Greening SPD recently, and also on the detailer schemes like those on St Helens Gardens. And there's a great deal that we are able to work together on. I'd like to think this is one of them. And I think this question arises from a misunderstanding, perhaps, and I'm very happy to discuss it with you further as well. I fear that you may have conflated the role of a new officer who has been brought into the council to facilitate engagement between residents and officers, a resident engagement officer, that is, and somebody who offers free planning and legal advice in relation to specific applications. Those are two distinct roles, and I can assure you that this person is doing the former of those in his capacity in the council. However, engagement and making sure that residents feel supported is extremely important. We have introduced development fora. We've also facilitated factual briefings on major applications like South Kensington Station to make sure that residents have the opportunity both to meet officers and also to put their views and concerns to applicants in advance of submissions and of committee hearings. We've also introduced a lot more online engagement, and there are good examples of that, like the Statement of Community Involvement itself, which received hundreds of comments before it was adopted, and likewise the Kensal SPD, which at the pre-engagement stage received more than 1,200 comments. There are lots of ways in which we're trying to get more people involved in planning. We have also recently been successful in applying to become a pathfinder for new digital local plans. Making sure that local people are at the heart of the planning process is something that we absolutely take seriously. But I believe that our outstanding planning officers, including our Director of Planning, do that already. There is a role for planning officers to assist members and residents with queries in relation to specific applications, and I've seen them do it myself. And I reject, I suppose, the implicit assertion that they are not doing that in the appropriate way at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Bakhtiar, do you have a supplementary question, please?
Thank you. Well, the question is in the same line. Do you agree that we have a conflict of interest in the planning department when it comes to advising both parties? And I think you might agree with me that we mean to be representing our residents to look after their interests because we are their representatives and owe them duty of care. This is indeed a constitutional and legal jurisprudence dilemma that we need to address and explore and find the right answers for. This is a national problem that we are challenged with that could lead to a wider discussion to come up with some logical answers. We need to be brave enough to raise this challenge, to raise to the challenge. I offer to work with you and the officers to form a working group and have an open discussion about this to invite academics to address this
Councillor
matter.
Bacchia, have you got a supplementary question, please?
Yes, this is a question. Are you happy to work on this issue to find a solution for it?
I'm certainly happy to work with you to ensure that residents feel listened to in the planning process and to ensure that they feel they're receiving the appropriate advice. I'm very happy to work with you on all issues planning. There are independent avenues, for example, Planning for Aid in London, that do offer independent planning and legal advice to residents who want to comment on applications. But if there are ways that we can tackle this, as you rightly say, it's a national issue, I'm happy to explore it, and in the past I've done likewise. When the planning white paper came forward, I did invite the Labour group to sign up to our response and to offer their own contributions to it too, and I will certainly work in that spirit going forward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Woodger, question number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm delighted to ask this rather exciting question on a slightly more I guess a seasonal question and topic. I'd like to ask the lead member for culture to explain what are the main proposed Summer of Love programme of events scheduled and what part she hopes this will play with the borough's COVID recovery.
Councillor Will, would you like to answer?
Thank Councillor Woodger for this excellent question on a lovely summer night. I'm absolutely delighted and thrilled to be telling that on Friday, we will be launching our KNC Summer of Love, and this is my show and tell moment here. Here we go. And we'll make sure all of you get all the materials to you. I think you've been emailed them already, but I'll make sure I get those to you. So yes, what is our Summer of Love? It is a campaign to help support the borough in reopening and its recovery post-lockdown, as you rightly alluded to. We really want you to help us push out the message that we are trying to get our local economy back on its feet by welcoming residents and visitors back to the borough. But also, it's actually really important for the well-being of our own residents who need to get out and talk to their own community again, especially after they've been locked down for such a long time. So, 3 main aims: highlight the key locations of the borough and promote what the area has to offer, encourage residents and visitors safely back out and about, increasing footfall, and position KNC as a destination while travel is limited this summer. Now, some of you may be wondering, what is the Kensington Chelsea Festival? Well, the Kensington Chelsea Festival, which is also launching this week, and part of that, you'll see there's brochures here at the back, more show and tell here. The Kensington Chelsea Festival is also new this year, and I think the way to look at this is that the Summer of Love is a lovely nest of all the wonderful things that go on in this borough, and the Kensington Festival is just one of the many golden eggs in that basket. And again, I'll make sure you get all the details. There's so much going on in this borough. Just to give you a flavour, as well as the festival, we've got things like wildlife bingo in Holland Park, Sunday markets at Goulburn and Portobello, international yoga, youthquake, Chelsea Flower Show. I could go on, but you know, there is really going to be lots and lots of wonderful things for everyone this summer. Please take a look at both the Summer of Love info and the festival and Art Week, and get out there and enjoy them all. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
Thank you. Councillor Woodger, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My follow-up is, what are your expectations for public attendance numbers, and what is the future legacy you hope for the festival?
I should have stressed, actually, obviously we want lots of people to come, and most of these activities are outdoors, because safety is, of course, and COVID a key aspect of the campaign, and making sure we follow the advice. But the sky's the limit. We obviously hope we get as many people, both locally and externally, coming and enjoying all the extraordinary things that this borough has to offer, all those wonderful golden eggs in our nest of love, and I guess legacy. Well, I hope that you know, the festival is new this year. That if it's a success, that obviously we will build and build on it next year. And the thinking really is a fringe type event to really sort of remind people that this is a very unique place. You know, the legacy, we'll have to wait and see, I think, is the answer to that. But do please tell everyone, and thank you again for the question.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And I think I kept trace of all the metaphors in there, but thank you. Question number 4. Councillor Idris.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening all, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I please ask my friend, Councillor Kamali, to give us an update on the local rollout of vaccine in the context of the successful national campaign to protect lives and livelihoods through vaccination. Can he also kindly provide an update of case numbers of the Delta variant and the impact this may have on our residents?
Councillor Kamali.
Thank you, Councillor Idris. I'll start with just the facts and figures. At the moment, the case rate is at 102.5 over 100. But the good news of that is actually in our 60-plus age group, which we're going to speak about a bit more later on, it's only 18.1 out of 100,000, which it speaks to the effectiveness of the vaccines that we're so fortunate to have across the borough. Your question references the Delta variant, which is now the predominant variant in the country, and so the working assumption is that all the cases are Delta unless sequenced otherwise. And now we're sort of hearing of Delta Plus emerging from other nations, and I fear we're going to have variants to come, but fortunately, up to now, all of our vaccines have been effective. As with the rollout, I think this is the first opportunity I've really had to thank all of the people that have helped make this possible. I know many people here tonight are volunteers at the vaccination centres. We've obviously got the NHS, logistics arms, the government, and also just the council officers that have been tireless behind the scenes, not only initially dealing with the pandemic, but then also making sure that we never have to deal with one again, and making sure that our most vulnerable are vaccinated quickly, and I think someone said earlier, double jabbed as in double quick time. I'm happy also to say that we've put a huge amount of effort in targeting our areas we thought would have higher vaccine hesitancy, and that is paying dividends. The most vaccinated wards in the borough all sit north of Holland Park Avenue. Unfortunately, as a member of Brompton and Handstown, you still have a bit of work to do, as does Courtfield, I'm afraid. But what we have seen is an extraordinary fast rollout. We've been challenging the NHS repeatedly because we knew that the vaccination figures in our borough simply were wrong. There was an issue of population, there was an issue of residents that no longer live here, residents which have moved abroad and such like. And they've now stepped up. You may have seen last week that we had a mass vaccination site at Stamford Bridge, home of the champions of Europe. And then this weekend, they're laying on 3,500 additional vaccine doses to get predominantly Pfizer into our residents' arms, as they know we're lagging behind on the figures. But I think the numbers also speak for themselves, that our residents are coming forward when they're asked. And I also should point out that we were the first borough in the country that set up a hub, following on from our hub calling the shielded residents, to a hub calling our residents who are unvaccinated. This was the first in the current country that worked in partnership with the NHS, doing the legwork for them, legwork our officers have done tremendously well on, pointing out that actually the issue wasn't vaccine hesitancy, it was this data issue that we've talked about. And really, I think the work that has gone into that really is something we as a council should all thank them for. It's phenomenal, as well as our public health teams who have just been non-stop. I think I tried not to ever respond to an email on a weekend, but I sadly have failed. Whilst Delta is something that we should, of course, take very seriously, the vaccines are effective, and we just have to keep getting them into arms. So this weekend, I'll be there at Violet Melchett Centre, making sure that people are herded in correctly in double quick time, and I welcome anybody that hasn't had their first or second dose to come along and get their jab. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Idris, do you have a supplementary? Thank you very much. Thank you. So now move on to item 12, Does any member wish to raise a matter under Standing Order 11 and speak for up to 2 minutes? Councillor Wade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bikes, scooters and motorbikes. There has been an explosion of the takeaway business since the start of the pandemic. And with the opening of Gatir and other home grocery delivery markets, the borough trial for e-scooters, the question must be asked where the pedestrians are supposed to walk. We all agree that we want to support businesses, but we need to support responsible businesses. So I ask the Council set up a group with Deliveroo, Just Eats, Uber Eats and anybody else that delivers and get them talking. Locate designated parking areas for bikes, preferably with demountable cameras in place, paid for by the businesses to identify individuals involved with ASBs and sometimes fights. Get our wardens to do routine pavement bike stops with the safer neighbourhood teams so that residents can reclaim their pavements. Who is enforcing the e-scooters? Who's enforcing the scooters that are on our pavements? Get the message out that the pavements are for pedestrians and these operators have to take control, and the council should reactivate and make the plans to change this in the retail culture. Pavements are for people and residents are getting very upset by being knocked over by bikes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wade. Councillor Bakhtiar, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When the housing management sends someone or a team to fix something in one of our properties or in the common areas of the building, they should be advised to cover the floor properly and to wipe it clean when they have finished. This is a normal and standard procedure in any other building renovation and maintenance contract. But our contractors and subcontractors do not feel that they need to do that, and they leave it for the tenants to do the cleaning, which is wrong. I personally have reported cases like this 3 times in the past 3 years, but they never end. We have a breakdown of communications between senior officers and the departments. We want this to be resolved once for all. Are there any clauses in the council's contract with the maintenance companies which shifts the burden of responsibility of cleaning or which waives this responsibility completely? This problem is felt by most of our tenants and many who have contacted me saying that they felt that the workers behaved that they were doing the tenants a free favor. How could the leadership and the chief executive resolve this? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bakhtiar. Councillor Idris, do you wish to speak? Thank you.
Next year, our nation will celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. One of the ways to mark the occasion is the Queen's Green Canopy, a unique tree planting initiative inviting people from across the United Kingdom to plant a tree for the Jubilee, to create a legacy in her honor, in honor of Her Majesty's leadership of the nation, which will benefit future generations. It will start this October and continues for the rest of 2022. In Brompton and Handstown, we started scouting locations and identifying streets where we either don't have any trees or not enough trees so we can plant more. Mr. Mayor, I would like to take this opportunity to encourage councillors, residents, schools, businesses, and all community groups to do the same, and our borough to join this great initiative. Trees are very pleasant to look at and be surrounded by. We all felt their benefit during the lockdowns, but they are also a great natural defense. They shade and shield us, protect against high winds and flooding, plus they absorb and store carbon dioxide. Let's get planting, and together in this borough, let's do for trees what we did for bees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And the relevant lead member or director will respond to those issues within 6 weeks. So thank you. Item 13, motions. Members will see that we have 3 motions printed on the agenda. I'd like to call on motion number 1. Members will see the amendment has been submitted. So I call upon Councillor Lindsley formally to move the motion standing in his name and Councillor Folkes to second. Councillor Lindsley.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Lindsay to speak for up to 5 minutes, please.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, and congratulations on becoming Mayor for a second time.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Ladbroke Grove Police Station has been used for the past century and more. It is an imposing building and has allowed police there to deploy quickly where needed, particularly in the north of the borough. When the front counter was closed a few years ago, a small police presence was opened at Royalty Studios. And whilst the nature of policing has changed in recent years, the importance of a police presence in any given locality remains. The ward with the highest crime rate in RBKC is Brompton and Handstown, reflecting offences committed against tourists who visit the museums, shops and restaurants in South Kensington. Conversely, in the north of the borough, violence is higher, and there are 3 gangs, many of whose members are from the BAME community. And, as well as Grenfell, the Notting Hill Carnival, significantly the largest event of its kind in Britain, possibly in Europe, is almost within a stone's throw of Ladbroke Grove Police Station. Not having a presence at either site would be a most unsatisfactory outcome. Mr. Mayor, I want to suggest there are 2 essentials. First, to ensure that Royalty Studios remains open for the foreseeable future, at the very least until May 2024. Early action by MOPAC would assuage the concerns of many residents that MOPAC appreciates that there is a problem. I first heard about the closure of Royalty Studios through the local community, and few that I've heard from have been impressed at MOPAC's actions, or rather inactions, on this. Reflecting this, the council leadership needs to have a contingency plan to work with others, realistically our MP, government and the community widely. But I stress this should be a bipartisan issue. Second, thanks to the involvement and initiative of the Kensington Society, Ladbroke Grove Police Station is now an asset of community value, and so first refusal when it is sold must be to a local community venture. When it is sold, it should be for the benefit of the whole of North Kensington, if not Kensington as a whole. The Mayor and MOPAC must talk with us about their plans urgently. Given they do not give the impression of hurrying, the Council needs to lead the way by engaging with our local residents and providing the leadership that the Mayor and MOPAC seem either unable or unwilling to offer. I understand that the Council may have plans about how to use the building, but the Planning Department needs to develop a framework of possible options, including but not restricted to use by the Council. Crucially, the police could and should be given space in any reconfigured building at Ladbroke Grove's site. This would give continuity of police presence in North Kensington, reassure locals whether in and around Grenfell Tower or more widely, and also Portobello Road, but also ensure that the whole of the building is well used. The whole country is aware that the current judicial inquiry into the Grenfell tragedy is taking place. Keeping a police presence at Ladbroke Grove would show how the Council can facilitate and lead change in a way on which many critics, but I would suggest also many supporters of the Council could agree, to help make a real difference for North Kensington and indeed the whole borough. Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Folkes, you wish to speak up to 5 minutes?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I welcome David Lindsay's motion to call on the Mayor of London and MOPAC to commit to residents that the front desk facility at Royalty Studios remains open and the uncertainty of the future of Notting Hill Police Station is resolved. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, said in November 2017 that 38 of London's remaining 73 station front counters would shut in order to save £8 million, leaving only 35 still open. Notting Hill Police Station is one of those 29 stations due to be sold in autumn this year. And after strong opposition and attempts to keep it open, we knew something more needed to be done. And as David has mentioned, the station was made an asset of community value in 2017. The Council has already set up a panel working with the MP and community to explore all avenues for the acquisition or retention, whether as an asset of community value or under one public estate policy. If indeed the station is to be closed later this year, then it is only fair that MOPAC are transparent about their plans of any disposal, and that giving us time to put some plans and some drawings in place. Space is at a premium in this borough, and there are multiple ways this extensive site could benefit the community. Senior police officers warn of a summer of crime when COVID restrictions are lifted, and there has already been seen an increase in gang activity, as Claire mentioned when she spoke to us earlier. Closing down police stations is an invitation for criminals to move in. Only a month ago, a 19-year-old was stabbed to death near Paddington Green Police Station, a station that was closed in 2018. MOPAC agreed to provide a temporary police front counter in North Kensington, recognising the needs of the community affected by Grenfell. But those needs still exist, and in fact those needs have been exacerbated over the past year due to the pandemic, which has resulted in a larger increase in unemployment, business failures and pressure on family budgets. North Kensington already experiences a higher volume of violent crime and antisocial behaviour than the rest of the borough, and there is a real concern that any increase in time that it takes police to reach an incident is time that will risk lives. Removing the North Kensington counter will impact the ability to keep on top of these crimes and will fail to provide the community of any reassurance that their safety is of primary importance. The police recently confirmed that a consultation on the closure of Royalty Studios will be undertaken after the May election. We're now in mid-June and we've heard nothing more about it. It's very easy to blame police station closures on lack of funding. This year, police funding will be a total of 15.8 billion. 600 will increase by a total of 15.8 billion. 636 million more than last year. And 20,000 new officers are being recruited, of which around 9,000 are already in place. And then there's an extra £1 billion that's been raised from the selling off of 116 police stations around the country. So rather than shut front counters, the Met needs to address potential internal finances. It's all very well asking for more and more funding, but are they actually looking at how they can buy items in a smarter way across the police, saving money on everything from cars to uniforms? The Home Office, working with the police, has already identified £100 million of potential savings that the police could make, something that keeping the counter open in North Kensington would only take a small percentage of. The shift to digital reporting is not working, and the rate at which crime is being reported is decreasing. COVID has flagged up digital disparity and competence, which is exaggerated in a multicultural area where English is often a second language. Residents want to see and know their police officers. They want to feel safe and to be able to report crime, and they need to know that there is a police presence permanently in the area. The time to return to community policing is now, and should be demonstrated by a cast iron guarantee to keep the North Kensington counter open for the foreseeable future.
I now call upon the amendment. Councillor Bateman, do you wish to move? Councillor Bateman, do you wish to move the amendment? Councillor Denkirk, second. Thank you. Councillor Blakeman, you have up to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. When this motion was originally tabled, it was quite clearly a politically motivated motion. So I can be political when I say that the sale of the Notting Hill station is intended to release funds to compensate for the loss of funding initiated by the then Mayor Johnson and exacerbated by the Prime Minister Johnson. The second point I'd like to make is that the so-called newly recruited officers are officers recruited to fill vacancies left by the former Mayor Johnson. They are not additional officers, they are substitute and succession officers. On the question of Royalty Studios, that is quite another matter. We were promised a local facility in the aftermath of the Grenfell atrocity. I have been told, and I understand that the lease is about to run out, but the commitment to retain the police in North Kensington is ever more vital than ever before. As the chair of the Safer Neighbourhood Board said, gang issues are getting worse, and I pointed that out when I spoke on the Working Party report, and our police need a local facility. Also, our 11,000 plus traumatised local residents also need a North Kensington facility. Just because the Grenfell fire, the Grenfell atrocity happened 4 years ago, doesn't mean to say that people have got better. A lot of people have got actually worse. I've had on occasion to refer many people to use the Royalty facilities, so Royalty must be replaced or at least have its lease extended. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dent-Coad. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under the Labour government in 2000 to 2010, there was a 31% increase in police funding across the country. Since 2010, the Met Police lost 600 million. Mr. Johnson, as Mayor, 2008-16, cut numerous police jobs after promising to cut crime, close 600 police stations across the country, and, of course, fire stations. However, he did find funding for £300 million worth of route masters, £300,000 worth of water cannon, which were illegal, £24 million for the self-financing Dangleway, 200 million for the self-financing hire bikes, nearly 6 million for plans for the Estuary Airport, 52 million pounds for the plans for the Garden Bridge, 300 million to convert the Olympic Stadium. That's nearly £1 billion of vanity projects, depleting mayoral funding and reserves, instead of keeping Londoners safe by supporting community policing and our fire services. In 2019, as we've heard, as Prime Minister, Johnson said he'd recruit 20,000 new police officers, but after the government had cut 21,000. Where will they be located? In police boxes? Mr. Mayor, CCTV, which a lot of people are asking for, is no substitute. We very sadly had a theft of Grenfell Memorial items on the day of the anniversary. This has been reported to police and the council. We actually know who's responsible for it, but we need the evidence. Where is it? They can't find it. It's ridiculous. Local residents have been asking for CCTV to protect these memorials for a very long time. What an utter waste of money. So, so many empty promises from Mr. Johnson as Mayor and as Prime Minister. They don't keep our neighbourhoods safe. They didn't in 2008, and they won't in 2021. So yes, Mr. Mayor, we must ensure there's a front desk walk-in facility somewhere in North Kensington, and we will support the majority party and even our MP when they lobby the government to provide the Mayor of London with sufficient funding to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any member wish to speak? Councillor, would you want to speak now, or do you want to speak summing up? Okay, Councillor, as a lead member. Would any member wish to speak? Councillor Will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've great respect for colleagues on the other side of the chamber, and I'm delighted to hear that there is support for this, although I think the history lesson was a bit slightly missing the point. This is about three things. It's about community, it's about consultation, and it's about collaboration. And before I touch on those, I'm really into my show and tell tonight. So here's another bit of show and tell. This is a fact sheet about funding for 21-22, which Councillor Foakes has already alluded to. There is more money coming into MOPAC and Met. So, that is not an excuse for a lack of resolution on this issue. It really just isn't. But I mentioned community. We've heard tonight from everyone here, but also from a resident. We know that this is a really big issue for our residents. They're really worried about this. They need some certainty. Consultation, MOPAC promised us, the Mayor promised us that as soon as the election was over, we would have a consultation about royalty studios. We still haven't had that. I have written to Sophie Linden. I have had no response. Residents are being told nothing. I really would appreciate Labour colleagues working with their colleagues with the Mayor to actually talk to us about this. And finally, collaboration. Since this motion was originally presented, we have actually made some progress that was alluded to by Councillor Lindsay, looking at one public estate idea which would allow us to buy Ladbroke Grove building for use of the community, and the sort of things that we would be looking to use it for is to definitely keep the police there, possibly new housing, possibly housing for particularly older young people with special educational needs. We really want to do this. We know it's what our residents and community want, but we need MOPAC to talk to us and not, as I fear, just try and flog this building as they have announced about the building in Shepherd's Bush today. So if I have a plea to colleagues, is that they support this motion and they help us to get the Mayor to provide finally some certainty after 5 years about what is going on with our police stations in North Kensington. I think we all owe that to our residents. Thank you.
Councillor Bateman, do you wish to sum up before we on the amendment?
Yes, I'd just like to make 2 points, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, it was when Ken Livingstone was Mayor that he introduced community policing. This was abolished by the former Mayor Johnson. That Councillor Foakes now wants this restored. I suggest that you should make up your mind what you want and don't dither. And secondly, it is only a month after the mayoral election. So for this, the majority party in this council to call for consultation is a joke. Just listen to the evidence being given at the moment to the Grenfell inquiry. Please have some sense and support this amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Lindsay, would you wish to sum up before we go to a vote?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes. The amended motion, Mr. Mayor, seeks to deflect attention from Mayor Khan's less than illustrious time as Mayor and shift the blame to the Prime Minister, a well-known tactic. In their comments, Councillor Blakeman and Dent Code protest too much. It's also an open secret that Mayor Khan really does not like RBKC. Indeed, that is probably English understatement, only more so. In 2004, at the age of 34, Liam Byrne was elected to Parliament. Seemingly, he had a golden future. He was in the Cabinet 5 years later as Chief Secretary to the Treasury. A year later, following the defeat of the Brown government, and on leaving his position, he left a note to his successor. Dear Chief Secretary, I'm afraid there is no money. Kind regards and good luck, Liam, in 2010. But to make a couple of substantive points, Councillor Dent Code referred to the importance of keeping London safe, but the reality is that under Mayor Khan, crime in general and knife crime has been increasing significantly. My second point is I'm so reassured by Councillor Will that you are aware of the importance of working with one public estate. And last, Councillor Blakeman, I thought that community policing went all the way back to that well-known Conservative politician, Sir Robert Peel. I may be wrong.
Thank you. I shall now put the amendment to the vote. Would those in favour of the amendment please show? Would those against the amendment please show? Are there any abstentions? I declare the amendment lost. So I now put the unamended motion to the vote. Would those in favour of the motion please show? Would those against the motion please show? Are there any abstentions? I declare the motion carried. We now move on to motion number 2, and I ask Councillor Chowan formally to move the motion standing in his name, and Councillor Idris formally to second. Councillor Chowan.
I beg to move.
Thank you. Councillor Idris.
But the second.
Thank you. Councillor Chowan, up to 5 minutes to speak. Please.
We are still in the midst of a pandemic that has inflicted so much loss in so many ways to our lives and livelihoods. The crisis has illuminated important factors that have previously been less visible. For example, it has focused our sights on just how vital it is for local people, especially the older residents, to consider their homes as havens. As a doctor, I routinely take a social history. From this, I can determine the patient's home situation and whether it is indeed a haven or an assault course. Are they able to carry out their activities of daily living, and are they safe? I have consistently found that the older the patient, the greater the need for support to do things that were previously taken for granted in younger years. I regularly see the infliction of medical conditions such as dementia and other neurological conditions causing mobility and other problems that make these daily activities very challenging. I also see patients becoming frail as they get older. These gradual changes creep up on us all at some point. We're all constantly reminded about the growing older population. This is not a concept, but a reality, and we need to plan and be prepared. Our borough, compared to others in London, has the fastest growing group that are the adults aged over 65, increasing from approximately 11,000 in 2012 to 20,000 in the year 2037. This growth has implication in terms of increasing healthcare needs and housing support for daily living. Our strategic housing market assessment showed a projected increase of 55% of the over 65-year-old group from 17,000 in 2014 to approximately 26,000 in 2035. However, the most important trend in terms of needs is the anticipated accelerated increase in the over 85-year-olds, who are most likely to need specialist accommodation. So what is the council doing about this? Currently, our supply of specialist elderly accommodation in the borough is approximately 13,000 units, incorporating both sheltered and extra care housing. There are also 8 residential nursing care homes that are rated good or outstanding by the Care Quality Commission. They house about 257 of our residents. So it is especially important that we plan for the future to provide the highest standard of specialist housing for our increasing older population across the whole borough, be it extra care or simply adapting homes to meet their needs. Residents living in these homes matter, and we must continue to serve their needs. As with so many council areas, the pandemic has made more urgent the need to develop plans for anticipated future demand and the need to work with our residents to shape the services they need. Alongside the delivery of extra care housing provision, the council will need to deliver a new supply of good quality accessible housing to replace poor quality sheltered housing units, fit for purpose, but also good for older people in which care can be delivered if required. Currently, the lower supply exists in the south of the borough. Mr. Mayor, this council notes the work carried out in support of extra care housing in the previous years,
in particularly the 2012 strategy that outlined the Council's vision to improve housing and accommodation with care service options for the older people. Mr. Mayor, given all that has been mentioned, more needs to be done to improve the lives of our future ageing population in our borough. That will inevitably include us all at some point. I look forward to hearing my good friend Councillor Idris's story that will put the above into context. To this end, I call on the Council to firstly assess our current stock, focusing on the capacity, quality and adaptability. Secondly, following consultation with residents, to report on the future demand for housing provision for residents over 60 years of age requiring care. Thirdly, to set out plans for improvements for our provision and the strategy for our residents who develop care needs but wish to continue living in their own homes in the borough. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Idris, do you wish to speak, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Dr. Max, for beautifully and eloquently laying the ground and opening our eyes to the facts and figures. I agree, we want good homes and the best housing provision for our elderly residents. But we also want homes that fits the needs of the users. The best way to do that is to talk to users and find out what works for them. So I called my mom in this exercise, now 85 years old, who until COVID hit our shores was very active and engaged in her community. Mr. Mayor, this is a woman who has a PhD in economics in German, a woman who at the age of 65 went back to university to study art and graduated with honors. Now she is taking an online writing course so she can write her memoirs and my late father's memoirs. To her, and many like her, the first step to good care is staying in her own home for as long as possible. That means modifying a few simple things around the house to make it easy and safe to use. It also means regularly talking with her to accommodate, with her and people like her, to accommodate the needs, for their needs and any changes. For instance, we Brits loved soaking in a bath, but a shower is much easier and safer to get in and out of in old age. Some of our older buildings have narrow internal doors, when occasionally an older person who cooks for themselves might need to push their prepared meal on a wheeled walker to the front room rather than carry a tray. Simple things like that. Some days, bending to pick up the post for an older person can be a real chore. So having a basket to catch the mail when the postman drops it makes it much easier to collect the post. Mr. Mayor, each case is different, so we need to be patient and understand in co-designing care with care users to meet their needs and requirements. We need to talk to them and we need to listen. And remember, it is the little things that makes a big difference. I know it is time-consuming and can be costly, but we owe it to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now open up to any councillors who wish to speak. Councillor Wade.
Over 20% of the borough's population will be over 65, with a substantial increase of those over 85 years of age. And we need urgently to act to provide the homes that are needed. We need to consider a spectrum of housing. 2/3 of our independent living accommodation that we nominate residents to was built in 1880, therefore converted and not purpose-built, and not now and not for the future. Attitudes to aging have changed. The methodology of services provision has changed. These units are in some cases not fit for purpose and do not promote high standards of mental and physical health and well-being. With the emphasis on residents remaining at home longer, we need to reevaluate what sheltered accommodation actually means and what extra care provision we actually need. We need to reinstate the Older People's Accommodation Working Group. This was a group that was started to examine the subject prior to the onset of the pandemic, and some useful information was coming out of the discussions with officers about what both the council stock and RSL stock was available in the borough. We need to adopt a policy to develop a range of housing options across tenures and affordability in our opportunity areas designed to provide appropriate accommodation that meets needs, changing needs. We need to consult providers, RSLs and care support agencies. Wi-Fi is no longer a luxury. It's become a mainstream utility and information provider, but many homes do not have this as standard. Above all, we cannot afford to leave this to chance. Older residents should be treated with respect and dignity, and at present, many have been failed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Nick Coe, do you wish to speak on this? No? Okay, Councillor Evans.
Mayor. And thank you for this important motion and for highlighting the need to address care homes and housing provision for the over 60s. RBKC has always looked after our older population in both North and South Kensington, and in Chelsea, of course. Sorry. Indeed, my friend, who is 93 and lives in the North, has a wonderful flat in one of our designated shelter housing for seniors. There are community rooms, health attendants, gardeners, and security. And she is even escorted to the mayor's church on Sunday. In the south of the borough, in Sutton Estate, as I walked around one evening, I noticed that it was extremely quiet by 7 p.m. I was told that Sutton Estate houses many of our aging population. Again, there are community rooms, lovely gardens, and a sense of community among the residents, a shared history and shared issues. I would also like to mention that we have a growing aging population, one of which a major contribution was made to the borough by the Windrush population. Yesterday marked the 72nd anniversary of the arrival of the Empire Windrush to the UK, and the Windrush population made a significant contribution to the Royal Borough, to our culture. If you do the maths, this was 72 years ago, so we do have an aging population among the Windrush population. We provide sheltered accommodation to former homeless. We have veterans. We have other ex-service personnel. We have mental health patients. We have disabled patients. And we just have people who have run out of funds. And unfortunately, that group is growing. We provide residential homes who support the over 60s, older aged residents, people living with dementia, people living with mental illness or physical disability. We have housing for the aging population. It offers health and emotional support. And I appreciate that lead member Cem Kamali recognizes the need for the linked-up approach between housing and adult social services and health to make housing everyone's business and to understand our aging population's housing needs within a full and informed context of the individual's needs. A multi-agency approach. Health and mental health need to be included in housing assessment placements. The aging population is growing. I support this motion. It affects our residents in the entire borough, And one day, maybe you and me will be part of this, and we will have to be planning ahead for the entire community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Kamali, do you wish to... Councillor Taylor-Smith, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, very briefly, just to thank Councillor Max to bringing this resolution and acknowledging point one, which is the assessment of our current stock, and I'm talking about housing, the stock owned as far as the council is concerned. And I think it's already been mentioned that it's as part of our 600 house building programme to build in within the designs within buildings, accessibility to allow people to remain at home and be mobile is obviously a very important component. It's already been mentioned in terms of the age of our housing stock, which does present us with challenges. I think the suggestion from Councillor Wade in terms of how we might look at the older residents forum, you know, we have a disabled forum, and I think an older residents forum would be a good idea for us to look at. And really just recording that it's not really just about the housing and the design of the housing, but it's also the support that we give people within that housing. And I think that's obviously a very important component. But I really just wanted to thank the speakers and thank Councillor Max for bringing the motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ali?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. May I also congratulate you again. I've congratulated your Deputy Mayor. Well done, and congratulations for second term.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing you at Al-Manar, hopefully in person, and continuing for that work. So thank you for being part of trustees as well. I do support, Mr. Mayor. This is a good example of working together as a cross-party and working together as a community for our elderly. And if I refer back to last year's scrutiny session, we've asked the communities, lead member for communities and senior officers to provide an information for us about the situation, the home situation, as well as the living standard for elderly, lonely, and disabled members of our community. And this motion speaks to that, and I'd like to thank both the councillors who've moved, Councillor Max and Councillor Awala Idris, for moving this timely motion. And I think it's a mirror image for us to look after the elderly, the senior citizens of our community, of our residents, and to the same way that we would like to be respected and looked after if we were ever need the services that we may be asking. So it's a reflection of what we would like to get, and I think it's wonderful for us to be in a position to agree on this, and I hope there will be a cross-party support for our community. And although this could be, well, the housing as well as the adult social care, but also there is a link to the community, because we want a vibrant community, a community that feels to be looked after. So I wish to add my support to this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kamali.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you also to Dr. Max for bringing this forward. We went from the medical to the personal to Councillor Idris there, and I'm going to follow up with a little bit more of a personal story as well. Having finally moved out of home in my late 20s, my parents decided that the time was right for them to downsize. And they, as a couple, they've moved home more often than the Labour group changes leader. And they had, for a brief moment, moved to Pimlico. My father was immediately in awe of the fact that he now had to walk to Sloane Square, so he immediately made it a mission to return to the Royal Borough. And thankfully we were able to find them a home in the Mayor's ward, in fact, a home which was built and designed for people over 55 years old. And the motion tonight makes reference to a number, but I'm sure many of the councillors here tonight would perhaps take issue with the fact that over 60 has been described as elderly across the chamber tonight. I know my 60-year-old mother certainly would, and my 82 father definitely would. So, but the home they moved into was something that is not an easy conversation to have with your parents. It clearly was designed for a particular type of lifestyle, but we thought about it very carefully, and we were actually thinking more about my 80-year-old father rather than my 6-year-old mother, but it was actually my 6-year-old mother who pulled the alarm and had the NHS and an ambulance around at the door only 2 weeks ago. Thankfully, a happy story, but it shows testament that our homes have to be designed for the people that live in them. It has to be designed from the bottom up, knowing where our population is changing, where the demographics are, but also not just for elderly and for older and whatever word you wish to use, actually for our younger residents as well. Not everybody is mobile, not everybody is able to get around. We have a large number of people with disabilities across the borough, and they need good places and safe and secure homes in which to live. So I'm really thankful to Councillor Evans as well for raising the point that we have to work in partnership with housing. That's absolutely something that we have to do, especially as we roll out more housing across the borough. But we also have to look at the sites we already have and make sure that they're fit for purpose, and they will put us in good stead for perhaps myself when I become somebody of that age, let's say. I certainly don't want to move to Pimlico. So here we are. We obviously have the motion with the recommendations for the officers to work to. I know behind the scenes they're already furiously working on many of these issues as they're constantly alive to the situation. And I really welcome the fact that this borough not only has safeguarding and supporting vulnerable residents, the third item on the first page of our new council plan, but it's being debated here tonight and it's being supported cross-party. So I think this is something we can all get behind, and I look forward to holding Councillor Taylor-Smith's feet to the fire a little bit and making sure we deliver on our commitments here tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chowan, do you wish to sum up, or are you happy to go to the vote?
I'll just briefly make some comments. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Idris and my colleagues for their words that speak for themselves and provide a logical and timely reason for this important debate. Councillor Wade's comments on the Older Residents Forum and consultation were pertinent, and also Councillor Evans making housing everyone's business struck with me, and Kim Taylor-Smith's on existing housing provision was very helpful, and Councillor Ali for his knowledge and work that he's doing on housing. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. So I now put the motion to the vote. Will those in favour please show? Will those against please show? Any abstentions? I declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Motion 3, planning. Members see that there's an amendment to this motion has been submitted. So I now call upon Councillor Connor to formally move the motion standing in his name, and Councillor Hammond to second.
Beg to move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Connor, you have up to 5 minutes to speak, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief as it's fairly late and time marches on. I have the regular pleasure of working with our planning officers in my capacity as Vice Chairman of the Planning and Planning Applications Committees, and I've seen the diligence and care taken on major and minor planning applications in the borough to come to the right decision and to meet our housing targets, whilst at the same time allowing buildings that are suitable and fitting for Kensington and Chelsea. And that doesn't necessarily mean traditional or classical architecture, and we very often see officers recommending highly contemporary schemes, but it does mean buildings that meet local requirements and which take into account the particular characteristics, needs and policies of RBKC. Those policies are made democratically by us here, and the decisions on whether to approve major applications should, I think, be taken by local elected representatives with an in-depth understanding of local needs, issues and residents' views on the advice of our expert officers. And I witness at planning committees the meticulous care taken by councillors who know that they're answerable to residents on both sides of the debate to get the decision right and to balance competing interests. And pleasingly, politics plays almost no part in the decisions of the planning committees, in my experience. I'm always rather proud of that when I'm chairing a committee, and councillors seem to vote with their conscience, by and large. The same cannot, unfortunately, be said for the highly political mayoral call-in function, which adds an unnecessary additional layer of cost, bureaucracy, and delay to what's admittedly already an expensive, bureaucratic, and slow planning process. And it also introduces a level of unfairness to opponents of schemes within the mayor's jurisdiction, who could have to deal with a scheme at local authority level, at the planning inspectorate, at mayoral call-in, and at Secretary of State call-in, whereas opponents of schemes elsewhere do not have this extra highly politicised stage to deal with. But it also introduces unfairness to applicants of schemes in the provinces who do not have the opportunity to appeal to the mayor. And I can tell you that there are other places in the country where housing is just as badly needed as in central London. And whatever one thinks of the principle of mayoral call-in, it must be beyond doubt that the present mayor has wielded his power injudiciously and excessively. No doubt you'll hear from Councillor Hammond shortly about the specifics of the Holiday Inn scheme, but that is of course not the only one, and the mayor has surely spent millions of pounds of public money on lawyers' fees. And of course solicitors' fees are always very good value when I'm charging them, but grossly excessive and disproportionate when others are. But it's truly shameful that in the Holiday Inn judicial review, the award of costs against the mayor resulted in one public body compensating another for huge solicitors' costs that should never have been incurred and would never have been incurred without the mayoral call-in. And in recent months, as well as the Holiday Inn case, we've had 100 West Cromwell Road, a scheme which in its later incarnation our planning committee recommended for approval, but was called in for political reasons. We've also had Heathrow College and Newcomb House, and the latter was broadly supported by the Kensington Society and would very well have been dealt with and finessed at borough level and have resulted in a better building. Ultimately, that's the most important aspect of this. Our job in the planning committee and officers' jobs in the planning department is to secure the best quality buildings for the borough, taking into account all the factors, and not least the need to build more housing. Officers and councillors are much better placed to do this in a dispassionate way and to achieve the best outcomes for the borough. And so we must, as a borough, continue to resist and oppose mayoral interference in planning matters. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hammond, do you wish to speak for up to 5 minutes, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and congratulations to you, sir, on your re-election. And it's an honour to follow Councillor O'Connor, who's built up such a great deal of expertise on these matters over the last 3 years. My remarks, as he presaged, will be based entirely around the case study of the Forum Hotel application, which caused such a lot of distress to my constituents over the last 3 years. The planning application for this was submitted shortly after our election in 2018. My friend Councillor Woodger described the proposal as the Tower of Mordor. In fact, it was a bulky twin tower arrangement of glass and steel that would be totally inappropriate, looming over the Queensgate and Courtfield conservation areas. Some 800 residents objected, and I think there were just 2 formal expressions of support. My ward colleague, Councillor Evans, and I spent many hours helping the residents' groups prepared for to face the planning committee. This sat on the 27th of September 2018 under the expert chairmanship of my other ward colleague, Councillor Marshall, who had very properly maintained his objectivity during all the preparations. The hearing was exhaustive and exhausting, with the final vote taken at midnight, but the result was decisive, with a 5-0 win for the objectors, and so all the effort that we put into it was worthwhile. And I'm certainly very grateful to the planning committee for their efforts on that evening. That is where the saga should have ended, with the decision taken by informed local representatives on our planning committee. Unfortunately, it was now that Mayor Khan started to interfere. He exercised his powers to call in the applications on the grounds that RBKC didn't have a plan to build sufficient affordable housing. His reasoning did not take account of RBKC's latest plans, despite the fact that these were to be subsidised by his own budget. Faced with a judicial review, he backed down and reversed the call-in. And again, this should have been the end of the saga, but it wasn't, as he called it in again on different grounds. This time, the application went to a mayoral hearing, which I have to say was disgracefully conducted by Sadiq Khan. It was quite clear from the biased and rude questions that he asked of the objectors, who included residents, council officers, and the former MP, and the easy ride he gave to the applicant, that he'd already made up his mind to grant the application before he entered the hearing. Summarising considerably, I'm pleased the council challenged the mayor's decision at another judicial review. Before this judicial review came to hearing, the mayor conceded the points and the judgment referred to Mr. Khan's improper purpose. Improper purpose must be only a short distance behind outright corruption as a damning indictment of a politician. And again, this should have been the end of the process. But it wasn't, as the mayor then called in the application for a third time. A second mayoral hearing was chaired by the deputy mayor in place of the compromised Sadiq Khan. I've got no complaints about the manner in which the deputy mayor chaired this hearing, but this time the GLA's institutional opinion on the application was obvious, and it was no surprise that the application went through again. I'm pleased that the Secretary of State listened to our request to call this in over the head of the mayor, and I thank the council and Felicity Buchan MP for their efforts to put in a good case to the Secretary of State. And the application would have been decided objectively after a public inquiry, which is what would have happened if the mayor hadn't interfered in the first place and the developer had exercised their right of appeal. But before the public inquiry could sit, the developer withdrew the application and the saga was brought to a close. So in summary, Sadiq Khan used his mayoral powers to add a lot of time and cost to this application and no value whatsoever. In fact, I would argue that his interventions have been very harmful, because he tried to ram through a proposal that would harm our conservation areas and had no regard to local opinion in our borough. There's an argument that the mayor shouldn't have call-in powers at all, and I'm certainly no enthusiast for an interventionist mayor. But as these powers do exist, they should certainly be exercised better and a lot less often than has been done by Mr. Khan. So I commend this motion to the Chamber.
Thank you. Just before we go to the amendment, I estimate that to conclude this motion and deal with the urgent appointments, we'll probably need to go beyond the 9:30 guillotine. So I just ask the whips if you would agree to an extension of sort of 10 to 15 minutes. 10 minutes? Could I, Councillor, are you the... Sorry, I thought you were the deputy whip. Sorry, okay. Okay, thank you. Can we go to the amendment then, please? Now, Councillor Bakhtiar, would you like to formally move the amendment?
I'd like to move, Madam Samir.
Councillor Lowry, please to second. Thank you. Councillor Bakhtiar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is the major applications that our planning department and our planning application committee are faced with, where most of our residents are dissatisfied. While the developers and their agents hire and bring in the most expensive and experienced legal and planning advisors, our residents and their associations are struggling to challenge them. And as they are not professional planning and legal advisors, their points are taken lightly by the committee most of the times. This is unfair. A recent example is the 344-350 Old Brompton Road, a development which was presented to our planning application committee with over 400 objections from members of the public, yet it was approved by the committee. I was the only objecting member. The Labour group of councillors in the borough have had different views of the mayor's intervention in our planning team, and our planning team has raised their objections and concerns to the mayor's planning team directly. We must remember that the borough is part of the London's wider picture and that we have collective responsibility towards the city. There are many groups who are collectively lobbying the mayor to get what they see necessary and see right. However, the mayor's intervention hasn't always been bad. A good example of the Mayor of London's positive intervention was the Haythorpe College application. Our planning committee approved turning the college into a luxury 7-star care home, and the cheapest one-bedroom flat to rent was going to be in the range of £180,000 a year. And again, I was the only member who objected to the application to protect the trees and the college. The committee allowed the developers to shut down another college in the borough and agreed on the removal of tens of mature, irreplaceable trees on site. The college and the trees are still there because of the Mayor of London's positive intervention. I urge you to support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry, do you wish to speak up to 5 minutes, please?
Mr. Mayor, it is deeply cynical for this Conservative group to be criticising the Mayor on planning matters when it is the Conservative Party who are at this very moment proposing debilitating changes to our planning law. Changes which propose to abolish the role of local residents at local authority level in objecting to nightmare planning applications which cause a great deal of harm to their standard of living. If your party gets away with it, it would be the end of democracy in the planning system as we know it. We have already seen residents rise up against these changes in the Chesham and Amersham by-election. Surely that was a strong enough warning sign for you. Do you not trust your own residents in Kensington and Chelsea? The leader keeps on repeating that we are changing, yet planning decisions in this borough are behind more closed doors than we have ever seen. This is not only for major applications, but also regarding those heard at the PAC. A few months ago, at a PAC meeting I attended, the rules were bent in order to allow the royal family of another nation in the Middle East to build something that our own planning officers had recommended for rejection, and instead the committee gave free rein to the developer to argue his case for an extended period of time in Part B. In layman's terms, that means in closed doors without public observation. The application ultimately passed against officers' wishes, but I thank Councillor Odurian for voting against that application alongside me. I'm sure he was just about as shocked as I was as to what was going on. If the planning reforms pass, there will be more incidents like this, and I encourage the leader to look up what I'm referring to. So who do we trust? The rapacious developments sanctioned by this council or the Mayor of London? I trust the Mayor of London. Residents stood with the Mayor. Residents stood with the Mayor of London when the Conservative group in this council was united in support of turning a historic University of London college, Heathrow, into a caviar care home, as Mo Bakhtiar so eloquently mentioned. It was the Mayor of London who stood up to you and overturned your decision. In doing so, he stood with the residents of South Kensington. Yet you got your way in the end, thanks to the inspector. If we abolished the role of the Mayor, it would merely give you free rein to force through your neoliberal planning ideas. Where were you when your residents appealed for you for high quality and affordable care? All this in the richest borough without any council-owned care homes. This is the same council who enthusiastically approved the disaster that was the Capco Earls Court development that has decimated a cherished feature of our community. Johnson, when he was mayor, hailed it a landmark project that will deliver much-needed jobs, new homes and improved infrastructure. On the other hand, Sadiq Khan declared unequivocally that he had no faith in Capco's plans. To be clear, nothing has been built there since the closure of the 2 exhibition buildings 5 years ago and the subsequent demolition. And this is the same council that is causing misery for the lives of my residents in Warnington Green by approving the disastrous redesigned, poor quality rebuild of their homes. If Sadiq Khan was mayor at the time, he would have called these applications in and blocked them as he promised with Earls Court. To conclude, Mr. Mayor, it is the Conservative Party who have received at least £10 million annually from developers, including £2.5 million from builders who use Grenfell cladding, and it is our Labour Mayor who is on our side campaigning against your rapacious planning reforms and caviar care in this borough. I sat opposite Sadiq Khan to speak vociferously in objection to the Newcombe House call-in. We were on opposing sides. I was also a member of the planning committee which voted to reject the Kensington Forum Hotel and was subsequently active on that campaign. Yet, I understand the importance of autonomy in local authorities' planning regimes, but this motion misses the point. More often than not, the Mayor is on our side, with our residents and with all of London. I support this amendment and encourage you to vote for it.
Thank you. Would any other member wish to speak? Councillor Dent-Goad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is, as we've been hearing, a whiff of hypocrisy in this motion. The Council that published in February 2020 a magnificent statement of community involvement, including a large chunk of it on planning, makes a number of commitments along with a very convincing sounding foreword by the lead member for planning and a very charming photograph of him. This sentence, "We are here to deliver the priorities that matter to our residents," which sounds fantastic. Edenham residents, however, and the people who live around there, have just been told that this is likely to be not possible. So this commitment is a nonsense. Why won't the council listen to residents, comply with the SPT of 2015 on the Edenham site, and build 60 new social rented homes using mayoral money on the general fund land previously occupied by the care home? Then potentially rethink the community requirement for the HRA land adjacent to Trellick Tower. Just imagine, please, the utter frustration of the Mayor of London at the lack of their commitment to building social housing. Some years, in recent years, it has been zero. And so the fault of all of this problem lies at with the council's refusal to build social housing unless the mayor clearly gives them some money. I find it utterly bizarre that the council's annual monitoring report used to subtract demolitions from its annual accounting, but now doesn't. It counts replacement homes as net affordable homes. They're decidedly not. 151 homes were lost at the Grenfell Tower fire. They're not subtracted from our total. And as Warrington Green goes through its different phases, they count the new homes as if they were brand new additional homes rather than replacements. It's utter nonsense. The Mayor's support of some of these large developments that has faced widespread local opposition. As you know, Councillor Lowry and I have worked with residents very closely. This has been provoked by our complete failure to admit to our failure of supplying additional social housing. Councillor Lowry and I, when we made statements to the Mayor, public hearings, we've done our best to get our message across. We are forced to agree these developments because of squeezing a few affordable out of these developments, because the council has singularly failed to provide additional social housing. This council has been disingenuous, having demolished, for example, the Thanesbrook residential care home and sold the site for a vast sum of money, and dispersed 55 residents, all of them outside the borough bar one. They will no doubt soon be claiming new homes, new residential care at the site on Lotts Road. So will that be new or will it be a replacement? And will they be using mayoral money to create these homes when they made £60 million selling the previous home run by the council? Mr. Mayor, the final sentence in the substantive motion and our own is asking for cooperation. We think we should cooperate further. We should discuss things further with the Mayor to explain this. But as I say, the fault lies with the council for not pushing forward a programme of social housing until the Mayor actually forced us to with money. So let's be honest first. Let's be honest first about our failings. Listen to our communities. Enough of this hypocrisy. It is anti-localist. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wade.
I just want to make a point of correction. Sadiq Khan did have in his manifesto that he would review the demolition of the Earls Court Exhibition Centre. When he actually got elected, he decided to step back from that decision. I suspect that was because he, as TfL actually owns 37% of that site, he thought it was better to save his money but I just wanted, he was given the option, he was asked to review the demolition, he declined. Just a point of correction.
Thank you. Councillor Vancitis, Councillor Taylor-Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, just on the subject of hypocrisy, I mean, I wasn't going to speak, but to listen to what Councillor Dent-Coad has just said about this inability of this council to deliver social housing, which I fully agree. You know, historically, we haven't delivered enough social housing, and that's what we're intending to do. And I sit here all the time and I keep saying that we really need to get on the bus to do this. So to listen to Councillor Dent-Coad, please may I finish? Could you do me the courtesy of allowing me to speak?
People have the grace to listen to you, Councillor Dent-Coad.
You talk about other people. Hypocrisy, and
you have the grace to listen to other people.
So we're looking at an ambitious house building programme. This is the largest house building programme this council has ever done. And what does Councillor Dent-Coad say about it? First of all, our phase one, there was not one of those schemes that Councillor Dent-Coad supported. We had complaints about the impact of pollution on some of our sites. You know, we have, as Councillor Dent-Coad has pointed out, on Ednam, we have an SPD of 64, but in consultation with English Heritage and our planning department, they say that we could get 164 on that site. Now, that's not something we're proposing to build, but clearly, if we are going to address this issue of our social housing, we have to maximise the use of our sites. Secondly, I mean, again, I've received questions with regard to the allegations of looking to social cleanse, on using money to how we might acquire properties in order to house people, give people decent homes out of borough. That got shot down in flames. The only thing that isn't shot down by flames is the taking over people's empty homes, I mean, which is political dogma in the extreme, because we know that we don't have the legislation that will allow us to walk into an oligarch's home and say to him, we're commandeering this and turning it into social housing. So I think really, again, I reiterate the importance of us working together, accepting that we do need much needed social homes, recognising we have 2,300 people on our waiting list. And in order to do that, we need to get together and start looking at our sites rather than trying to shoot down at every opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bennett. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to draw the Chamber's attention to a potential confusion in the amendment, and that's why I think we'd all be much better off passing the motion unamended. In the amendment, it changes the wording so that the Council no longer regrets the Mayor of London's repeated interference in borough planning matters, but rather understands it. Well, this could have a couple of different meanings, Mr. Mayor. It could mean that the council understands that the mayor was, as he admitted, motivated by an improper purpose when he interfered in borough planning matters. It could, on that theme, mean that the council understands that the Mayor of London isn't interested in the views and the needs of borough residents when he interferes in borough planning matters and would rather play politics. But it does have another potential meaning. It could be that, aware of that our mayor's ego is almost as big as the 110-metre hotel he tried to foist on us, that the Labour group thought that they would be better off, and indeed safer, removing some of the teeth and the meaning from this motion and inserting instead obsequious platitudes. Now, I don't favour this interpretation. Having got to know a number of the Labour group members over the last few years, I know that for all their lack of soundness on matters of policy, they do still care very deeply about their residents, and the large majority of them always seem to put their residents first. So I don't think that they are trying to do that, but I think it is a confusion in the amendment. So I think it would be better, and I would suggest to the whole chamber that we leave the motion unamended, that we make it clear that we're not trying to curry favour with this solipsistic mayor or seek his approval, but rather we're trying to do our job and hold him to account. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Salasitis, do you wish to speak as lead member?
Mr. Mayor, all it's going to take for tower blocks in this borough to triumph will be for the councillors and residents of Kensington and Chelsea to do nothing. We have in recent years seen the Mayor of London's vision for Kensington and Chelsea, or should I say for a vision of Dallas in Kensington and Chelsea. In the past, we've seen schemes like 100 West Cromwell Road, soundly rejected by councillors and residents, then made taller by the Mayor of London. The same happening again in the present with a scheme that lies in abeyance now at the Holiday Inn, which, as we heard earlier, was a decision motivated by improper purpose, which is tantamount to corruption. And as we can see from schemes that are being brought forward by the Mayor that have been highly contentious in the southern part of the borough, his vision continues not to align with large numbers of residents in Kensington in particular. I've listened carefully to many of the interventions on the other side. I think it was quite revealing that Councillor Lowry took 3 or 4 minutes to even refer to the Mayor of London, preferring instead ad hominem attacks on members of the Conservative Planning Applications Committee. And I can't, for the life of me, think of a single housing application that any Labour member in this side of the chamber has supported over the last 3 years that I've been on the council. We do need to meet our housing targets, and sometimes there are difficult decisions to be made. But at the core of this motion is an argument for localism. It's a belief that we know that local people, local councillors know best how to promote good growth in our places, in our neighbourhoods. It's a belief that decisions are best made by those that walk the streets and who serve their communities day in, day out. And it's a belief that an interfering mayor with responsibilities very far afield is much worse placed to make those decisions. I certainly think we ought to vote for the motion as is and not as the amendment suggests. As Councillor Bennett says, it's full of misunderstandings and all of these kinds of things. And I hope that the Chamber will support that view.
Thank you. Councillor Bakhtiar, wish you to sum up for the amendment, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, there is one major point we need to understand. We need to look at the bigger picture. We are part of London. This is one borough in many boroughs in London. We have collective responsibility. And we gave example of positive mayor's positive intervention, which saved sites in here, which is still there, and saved trees. So it's unfair to say we don't have vision, we don't understand what's going on. We have vision, we understand what's going on, but we have bigger responsibility because we are one part of London. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Connor, do you wish to sum up now for the motion before we go to a vote?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you to all councillor colleagues, including those opposition colleagues. Councillors Lowry, Bakhtiar, Dentcode and Wade are all extremely valued members of the Planning and Planning Applications Committees, and I'm pleased to say in those committees they're far less political than perhaps some of the remarks this evening. I would just refute what Councillor Bakhtiar said about suggestions that local comments are ignored. He cited the example of our old Brompton Road application that we had the other day, and I know that officers and councillors pored over all the comments and then voted as they saw fit, and many of those people who'd made comments, views were heard in the decision of the committee. I also strongly refute the suggestion that trees are not protected by the planning committees. I personally have worked extremely hard on my time on planning to look after trees in this borough and, where possible, to have more planted as a result of planning decisions. So I certainly wouldn't accept that. There may be something to be said in Councillor Lowry's points about the government white paper not yet being perfect and that having been seen in recent days, but yeah, we'll see whether that gets amended in due course. Other than that, I would simply say that I prefer the unamended motion and would commend the original motion to colleagues in the chamber.
Thank you. So I now put the amendment to the vote. Would those in favour of the amendment please show? Would those against the amendment please show? Are there any abstentions? I declare the amendment lost, and I'll now put the unamended motion to the vote. Would those in favour of the motion please show? Would those against the motion please show? Are there any abstentions? I declare the motion carried. Thank you. Item 14, appointments to committees and outside organisations. The appointment sheet has been circulated, and I ask, who's the Deputy Whip? Okay. As Deputy Whip, can you move the nomination standing in your name? Thank you.
Whip tonight. I'm moving the nomination for Environment Select Committee.
Thank you. Is the nomination agreed? Are there any other nominations? Thank you. This concludes the business of the evening's meeting of the Council. The next meeting is scheduled to be held on the 21st of July. Thank you very much, and thank you again to Councillor McVeigh, and good night.